Hey everybody, and welcome to Let's Talk Shalom. I am one of your hosts, Proverbs Guy, and I'm with your other favorite host in the world, your Dream Guy. Good news, bad news scenario for you fine folks this evening. Bad news is our two special guests have had to cancel a little bit last minute. We're going to have to reschedule them. This was literally last minute. We even waited and showed up late trying to see if it could come through, and unfortunately just not tonight. So we're going to have our two trafficking survivors come back and talk with us about the realities and kind of compare personal experiences to the movie that's out now that's causing all the stir. And in substitute of those interviews this evening, Brian and I are going to be opening up the chat to some questions. It can be ranging from ministries, starting ministries. Brian's really good with the clerical sides. We can do some dream interpretations. We're just going to hang out for a while and not waste the opportunity to fellowship. Your Dream Guy, how are you this evening?
It's been a wild ride. Try a lot going on. I'm trying to get into the insurance business and get some books out there, and of course this LTS Media, our media business going, and of course Psalm 16 ministry, which I do. So busy, and help you guys get ministries going, or whatever you need going, podcasts, YouTubes, etc., etc.
What kind of insurance are you looking to get into?
Life insurance and annuities and some other financial products my friend does. Just get my license and make some recurring income. And you can actually kind of will the business to your kids if you build it up. So just kind of looking into it right now. I haven't started yet.
And they have like really aggressive tactics. For instance, when you go in, if you refuse to purchase insurance, they sling everything off your counter. They tell you they'll be back, like very upfront and forward.
Yeah, we empty all your drawers out.
Only 10%. Yeah. So, Gospel, what were you up to today, man?
Just got off of work. I was excited to see your guys' show today, but it didn't come on, so... Yeah, I gave you a message, and here I am.
I'm sorry, man. We were just running late. We really tried to get it together, and it just didn't work out like it was supposed to.
So it's a good time to get to know the audience. So if we could do a focused conversation more maybe on people's callings. So we're talking about helping people get off the ground with podcasts, YouTubes, ministries, books, wherever they need going. Is there anything you feel particularly called to do? Gospel? Is there anything like you're like, this is what I'm supposed to do in my life?
I don't feel like... I feel like my calling... I don't know. I feel like there's always been a real firm wall between me and my calling. I'll put it that way.
Mm-hmm. Is there something specific you want to do, or is a firm wall between finding it out?
That's pretty much it. Yeah. I try, I really do. I think about it. Like, what does God want me to be doing? And, or even the other way around, what would make me happiest? I don't know, man. I've always had a real hard time getting to either one of those answers.
So, is there any group of people you feel especially compassionate for?
Probably not the best person to ask that question. No, I don't have a group of people I feel compassionate for. No.
Not any? I mean, to just offer context, Dream Guy, Gospel Gladiator is somewhat new to the faith, so
Okay.
he's not like a really seasoned believer. But that is discouraging because, I mean, we're commanded to love everybody, so we should feel some sort of level of a calling towards some group of people.
And sometimes it's
Well,
go ahead.
I don't necessarily feel I'm called to a group of
Hello.
people.
Hi,
Hey, there's
Ryan.
there's Ryan. What's up, buddy?
Hey, Ryan.
Hey,
So
how are y'all
it
doing?
could be
I'm just here right now. I'm on the phone with Loria also.
hey. So it's
So-
sometimes it's a group of people. Sometimes it's a certain geography. Sometimes it's a certain cause. Like it just makes you very passionate and a sense of justice about it, or a sense of someone needs to do something. So sometimes it's like someone doesn't understand the scriptures, or like these, the Bible isn't in this language yet, or
Are y'all
or
supposed to have
curing
sex
cancer.
traffickers on the show?
What's that?
Not sex traffickers, but victims of sex trafficking.
They both had to cancel last minute, so we're going to try to rebook
okay.
them. So we're doing
Oh,
kind of
so
a panel,
sorry.
and we're talking about callings, what people are called to do. Like if you're called to a certain group of people, or you're called to a certain geography, or you're called to fix a certain problem in the world. Like it's just something you feel, well, I'm good at this, and there's a need, and I can solve this.
Yeah. Okay. I got you.
So, but is anything kind of tug on you, or you just kind of light up if you see the need, or you see the issue, or you see something?
Okay.
Sorry.
I'll take you through a scenario.
Show is
There was a
Rose.
buddy of mine. There was a buddy of mine who he got contact dermatitis from all the years of work that he had.
Mhm.
And the doctors and the insurance companies and L&I was jerking him around. So I took a look at his paperwork and I noticed something, that there is a recurring theme going here. And had I known better, had I had better hindsight, I probably wouldn't have gotten involved as I did. Because I kind of understand what the doctors were talking about now. But long story short, I got the doctors to do the patch test and the insurance claim went through. Now he's got a pension and a permanent check coming in week to week.
Wow. So it's a matter of justice almost. Like this was an injustice.
More or less.
You don't remedy it and use like some legal, medical, more analytical, scientific kind of thinking to advocate and to make sure there was justice.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, we went to a pseudo criminal. She called it a pseudo. What was it? What did she say? She said pseudo civil criminal case. And she questioned me because I didn't have a lawyer's license. But I told her that this is this is contingent on what do you call it? It's a consultant agreement, right?
Mhm.
Because he technically has hearing problems, so I'm his ears.
There you go. You're like his translator. Oh, and
Right?
I've
Yeah,
seen
so
people who were. So she couldn't kick you out. It's
She
like
couldn't. Yeah, she couldn't kick me out. Like I wasn't there in a legal capacity, but I could speak for him, so I was there in a legal capacity.
Sometimes you get thrown into it. You know, in many states, you just take the bar exam. You don't have to actually go to law school. You can take the bar exam.
I'm getting real close to it, man. I mean, my court case is coming up on the 18th, man. We'll see if things go the right way. I might just take the bar.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's go time, baby.
You can take the bar, and there's a lot of fields like being a court appointed special advocate for children. I did as a volunteer, and there are a lot of ways to kind of get involved, to advocate for people. especially like these refugee places or La Paz, which is for Hispanic people that are just moved to the U.S. to defend their rights. So there's a lot of things you can do without being a licensed attorney to help out in those kind of situations. Being an advocate, the unemployment office hires people, but also just take the bar. You never know. You might have got thrown into your calling and never knew what hit you. Have you seen that movie Dark Waters?
Yeah.
Or Aaron Brockovich? Yeah, they're advocating
Yeah.
environmentally, but so that's something to think about.
Chromium 6, baby. Chromium 6.
There you go. You understand the science of it, plus the law, and then you can.
I do.
And you have,
I mean,
you have a personality just not easily offended, or you're overly emotional, or you don't get drained by debate. You know, it's a good if you're INTP or ENTP.
And you know what? I think that is your calling, Gospel, because the other day when I mentioned that eventually YouTube will probably take my channel down, and you said, no, let me handle your appeal. Like you wanted to do that legal part on my behalf. Like you stepped up or was willing to step up for me. So that most likely is your calling.
That'd be cool, man. If I could, yeah, that's kind of, yeah. We'll see. I mean, we'll see. The one thing I gotta worry about is the judge turning around and telling me I gotta cover legal fees. Like, but I don't see that happening in my case. Like,
That's very hard to get.
They don't have. They're cops, so I don't know. We'll see what happens. There's all bets are off the table, bro. Like I'm going up against the police department by myself.
Oh wow!
Like I couldn't find an attorney. But look, the evidence that's against them is so damning. It's in their report, and the thing about it is I found their procedures the other day. The Washington State Patrol procedures. It states what it says everything you're supposed to do in there, and I swear it's like they didn't read the thing.
Oh, Legal Aid Society.
Yeah.
I'm sure the ACLU might take it up if you needed the help with it,
Well,
or the American Center of Law and Justice.
They will be interested as soon as I get a nexus letter, right? But I first have to prove my case, and then I turn around and I refile because the reality is that the officers were acting in scope when they committed this crime. So that implicates the state. But I don't have permission to sue the state until I prove my case. So I have to get a nexus letter from the Department of Justice.
I've dealt with Nexus before. I was in a hit and run where the guy hit and ran me, and it was falsely reported I hit and ran him. So my insurance went up quadruple immediately, like $500 came out of my account. And I had to go through and get this reporting to underwriter, who underwrites all these insurance companies, to correct it because they put it completely, utterly backwards.
Did you do an appeal? Did you do an appeal and attempt to redetermination?
Oh, I just wrote them a letter and they fixed it. I sent the police report. And it's like, do you not read? What the heck? And the insurance company refunded my money, but it was crazy. I also knew a guy, he got arrested for DUI. He doesn't drink. Because they can do that now. That's called the drug whisperer. Was this cop in Georgia, state trooper. He got the award from Others Against Drunk Drivers for the most DUI arrests. Not convictions, just arrests. Get the trophy, all you have to do is arrest a bunch of people. So he said he would look at their eyeballs and tell if they have drugs in their system. So they would get you for DUI drugs, and it takes 5 months to get your labs back. So you sit in jail for an overnight, a couple of days. Car gets towed. You know, if you're a waiter, you lose your ABC license. You know, all this crazy stuff, and it takes months and months to clear it. Go to court 4 or 5 times. It's like, oh, drug panel 000, alcohol panel 000. But they think they can tell you're on drugs by looking at you.
But you see, the thing about it is that the ticket becomes commercial paper, then it gets tied to a QSIF number, and it gets traded on the stock certificate. Oh, right? Wow. Like that's exactly how this works. Like they turn around, right? Because what they can do is they can turn that into a future, and the reason that they can do that is because Well, because you're going to have to take classes.
So it's like
right?
investing.
So
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's getting like a bond out there that can be purchased, right?
Yeah, it's like a
So
savings
China
bond.
or maybe so like China or maybe Ireland, that there's a lot of people that'll buy those. So that's exactly like a ticket's not what you think it is. It's a bill of retainder, right? So that they can put life to a bill. Okay, so like what they're
Yeah.
doing is that they're assuming that you have tax liability, right, for all these people that are doing this job. So they assign a bill to you, then they write off the CUSIF number and they sell it as a future. So it's
Well, it's like money in
ridiculous.
the bank. The bank is loaning the money out at interest while you're thinking it's in a savings account. So it's basically the government taking it, putting a savings account under their name, and then loaning it out and making interest while they wait on your court case to come up months later. Yes, so this is that's wild stuff, but it sounds like something you're very passionate about. This is what I do as part of life coaching. Is you're very passionate about it, and you're skilled at it, and there's a need for it. So you see that perfect triangle of your skill, your passion, and the world's need. That usually equals calling.
The next time you get pulled over by a police officer, one of the more important questions you need to ask is, are you offering me legal advice? That'll set him completely off base. Like I don't know why. I watch all these videos, nobody ever asks that question, because the officer is telling you what you have to do and he's advising you of the law. Well, the only person who's supposed to advise you is your attorney.
Outside of Miranda rights. So and you probably have
well, no. Even beyond Miranda. No. You don't want to ask about detention. Detention comes later. That's usually when they have you like in questioning. You don't worry about detention because if they're interacting with you, you're already under detention, right? Like that's kind of a moot point. What you want to establish is the officer trying to act as an attorney or a collection revenue agent under the 1966 Revenue Act. Because he's supposed to be a police officer, which implies that he's a peace officer, right? But if he's there and he's trying to stick you with a ticket, that's a revenue agency, a revenue collection agency, and he's not allowed to wear two hats.
And I also heard, am I being accused of a crime, officer?
Well,
is that a question you asked?
I mean, if you wanted to leave,
I have to disagree with you guys.
What do you mean?
I feel like you guys have both already said too much. You hand him your driver's license and your registration, and you smile, and you be respectful, and you wait for him to do what he's going to do. Answer no other questions.
I have a question.
Do you know how many times I have been? Do you have any idea how many times I've been pulled over, Proverbs guy? You have any clue?
I would guess a lot. But hold on one second. We'll get back to your multiple tickets. Grayson, you were going to say something?
Yes, it's very important. I'm glad you called me back. I need to know, do I or do I not have a dead hooker in my truck? Because that's going to greatly determine how I respond to this cop.
I think I have the wrong ram.
I'm sorry. Sorry. I apologize for that.
No, this man needs confession. It's perfect timing, Father Chuck. This man needs confession.
I didn't say I killed her. You guys are assuming evil things. I mean, I just found a dead body. And I'm trying to do Christian
in the back of my truck.
You picked it up and you moved it in your pickup truck.
So that I can bury her. I'm giving her a proper burial. Or him. I don't
know.
So we were talking about callings. We've established that Grayson may feel called to a life of crime, or be a mortician. We're not sure. Like Benjamin
Franklin
Franklin
have lived a life of crime. But
yeah,
I've never been arrested for anything.
Benjamin Franklin and Leonardo da Vinci were both in similar endeavors. Actually, they got arrested by the church, I think, for similar things.
You are the first person, gospel gladiator, that I've ever heard espouse this stuff. Well, not the first one. In person, I've heard lots of people say the things you're saying, and that they aren't correct. First off, but it's interesting that you believe it.
What
Wow.
you think that this is incorrect? You think this information is wrong?
I mean, I bought futures on the stock exchange, and it has nothing to do with tickets written to people. So yes, you can show me. Just prove me wrong by pulling up the information and just show me how I'm wrong.
So
Show me how futures are somehow
look at
tied to tickets.
the CUSIF number. Okay, like if you look at the number at the top, it's the same kind of number you're going to find on a stock exchange, right? And then they turn around and they turn it into a bond. It's not sold like a stock; it's sold as a bond.
So that it's not a future because futures aren't bonds.
Well,
They're futures.
they take it and they sell it as a future when you're talking about like you go to a class, right? Like that's different though. Like they're taking your name and they're tying it to a business, and they're doing that for like so that they can extend their stock. Right? It's because it's a part of the law. So if you get pulled
by
over
the way,
and I
also
take you
welcome
to
P-Town.
Hello, everybody.
if I take you
Hi,
if I
P-Town.
pull you over and you've got a class, right? And I got this CUSIF number that reports you, then my stock revenue agent is going to push the stock a little bit more because we have more units to sell. Right? It all translates. It's all the same thing.
I'm going to grant you that you won this argument. I'm going to give the next one by default to Grayson, most likely. But let's try to redirect back to identifying your calling and then being useful in that calling.
Oh,
So,
this is
Grayson,
kind of related. If I can just cut, sorry.
go ahead, Tom.
I saw a crazy drunk driver last night, like pulling a horse trailer. And I live in a busy area, 4 lanes. This guy was completely negligent, just did not care.
Wait,
went off the
I want to get this straight. I really
Okay.
don't mean to interrupt.
You're
This
okay.
guy was driving a team of horses drunk.
I had to keep my distance. My wife was yelling at me while I was on the phone with the police because
Okay.
it was so dangerous. It looked like a horse trailer. I don't know what he had in it,
Mhm.
but he was so drunk that he didn't even know he was
all.
off.
I got you.
I
thought it
haven't
was a
seen
drunk
that in
Amish
10
guy.
years.
I was so confused. I've seen YouTube videos of the police pulling over
yeah.
drunk Amish guys
But
on the horse and buggy.
It just makes me think like someone was so out of it and had no respect for other people's lives. Like, I don't know.
It sounds like P-Town might be one of the Guardian personalities. It's usually ST or an SJ, sensing judicial. And you worry about the welfare of others, which is part of justice. Do you feel
Well,
like ties into anything you're called to do in your life?
I minister to atheists.
Okay. Well,
So,
I mean,
I don't know.
you feel like
It's
so.
not fun.
I'll rephrase it. Do you
Actually, Dream Guy, are you familiar with the atheist Aaron Raw?
I'm not.
He's a really famous YouTube atheist, thousands of followers, and P-Town is the only Christian on his panel.
I just spent the
Cool.
weekend with him, by the way. He was
wow.
up in Washington.
So, like,
So I
he's
went down
boots
and
on the
hung out with
ground witnessing to atheists.
And you know, as we're been so Christianized in the past 2,000 years in the West that we don't think about the Gospels and the Apostles, and like, unless you're a Jew, you're a straight up Zeus, Jupiter pagan. Like Paul's walking around these Gentile cities, everyone he meets is an atheist or not. Atheist is pretty rare back then, but pretty much a straight wicked. Like that's so rare and strange to us, but we don't think about the conversations the apostles had. And the people they interacted with were completely, totally, 1,000% unchristianized, never heard of Jesus. Some of them never heard of Moses. So,
Well, you
I
won't
think
believe what
that's
I
an
just
interesting
dealt with.
perspective. What's that?
I was down there, and it was Satanists boycotting Sean Foyt. Is that his
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Is that his name?
Yeah, the curlier guy in California.
So I spent 2 days with Satanists, literally,
Mhm.
and reverse baptisms where they burn Bible pages and do a whole ceremony.
Oh wow.
Gender affirming. There was a drag show. So I'm the only Christian there. Like, I'm kind of keeping my distance, but I talked to so many people because they would come up to me, and I don't think they realize how much they're actually playing with fire. They think they're doing it in rebellion to Christians, but it's amazing how accurate the Bible is to me. Like, I mean,
So you're in
it's
apologetics and evangelism, and this is protecting. You're trying to protect them from the consequences of the life they're living, the choices they're making.
But in
I
fairness,
don't know.
B-Town, I
know.
can ask you a question. If they weren't doing these things, like if they just were non-believers, would they be suffering any greater consequence for their blasphemy? It just seems like their blasphemy is just silly. I don't approve. I think people should be able to have the right to do these things, but I think it's silly to do them. But
Yeah, and I see your perspective, but if Grayson, one day you became a Christian and you got to see what I saw, it's a whole nother level of exactly what the Bible says will happen when you start to deny God as a creator. It's amazing to see how much into fruition that it goes and how accurate it really is. I could give you, I can describe it for you, but I mean, and give you Bible references, but I know you're not a Christian yet. So
Would you take it into, like, if they were doing this for any religion, like not their own? Because sometimes Satanists are actually just atheists, like Anton LaVey's an atheist.
that's what
But
they were.
Aleister
They weren't
Crowley's
real.
actual Satanists. Were these atheists that are just very hostile, or were these actual Satanists?
No, they weren't real
Or mixed?
Satanists that I know of. And I'm pretty sure they were just atheists, just on a political like rebellion. And just a rebellion too. Most of it was people grew up Jehovah's Witness, Catholic. No offense, Pastor Charles.
He's Orthodox.
Or you're Orthodox.
He's not
Some of them were Orthodox. So,
well, 80% of Wiccans
It's
grew up
like-
in a Christian home, grew up in church.
yeah.
So
So
usually
I
the
don't
peop-
think.
Go ahead.
No, so I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
Oh, so I'm saying, so usually it's the people with that level of hostility were actually very church hurt, and have some kind of bad personal experience growing up at home.
Right. A lot of them, their parents were really into, the church, or typically their parents were pastors in a sense. And they must, and I'm guessing a lot of them experienced some trauma that
Mhm.
they don't even want to talk about, Possibly. I mean, I can only speculate. But they also have personalities where they want to be rebellious when they see something that's not true and not right.
Well, that's sometimes things like that, like Indigo Girls. They're great musicians, but they're lesbians, but they have degrees in religion, I believe, at least one of them.
All of that.
So
yeah.
it's this.
I did karaoke with them. Man, they were so free and good. Like, not very good singers, but just the passion into it,
Mhm.
Like,
my ex-wife. I took my ex-wife to one of their concerts, and she was a big fan. But it's it's amazing the level of musicianship and lyrics, and they're incredible music, creatively. But there's this underlying thing about Jonas and Ezekiel. It's a song about this Native Americans being persecuted and whatnot. There's a strong sense of justice, but if you have a sense of justice without God, sometimes it just turns into this anger, and because you recognize the injustice, and it's worse when people do it in the name of God. So they turn against God because it's not because necessarily a bad person in general, but because they have a strong sense of justice, and this injustice has been committed in God's name, like these reservation schools and whatnot. So it just directed at God because the injustice was done in the name of God. And sometimes people have oppositional defiant disorder, or they're just antisocial. You look in India.
Some of them were a little antisocial as well. It was interesting. You got a hodgepodge, but
like the Muslims and Hindus in India, they killed each other by the hundreds of thousands, maybe the millions. But there were no Christians. There were the Muslims and the Hindus. So if these people weren't atheists, if they were atheists, not attacking Christians, attacking any other group, or if it was some Muslims doing this or some Hindus doing this, we should all be kind of concerned, like this level of hostility is there. Like we're going to not burn our own books. Like in the book of Acts, these people who became Christians used to be sorcerers, took their sorcery books from their own sorcery books and burned them. But this is one religious group singling out another religious group publicly to basically do hate crimes. No matter which groups it is.
So yeah, it's the extremism. Their reaction is to fascists on among us Christians, and it's a minority. I didn't experience any of that, and I went out there and worshipped at that Sean Foyt concert. Like, I didn't see any fascists, but I did see some swastikas outside around town. Like, and Aaron had to point them out to me. And the people had to point out, oh, this person's wearing his shoelaces like this. He's a skinhead. That was a skinhead.
Like Jack Boot, the white laces.
I didn't know this stuff. Like, I was like, oh, so you guys are rebelling against that as well. They associate Nazis with Christians, which I associate it with, evolutionist atheists. I think some of them could
Well,
be
most of them are
Christians.
Wiccans. Most
It
of
was
them
a
are,
whole, I don't know,
neo-pagans.
you know, I mean, but the whole ideology of the supreme white race, I just assume, like, they at
Well,
least have an evolutionary, you know,
white
view.
nationalists
sense-
are overwhelmingly religious, overwhelmingly, and because they're mostly American, they're overwhelmingly Christian.
Sure, but my point is that they would be evolutionists if they're going to believe in white supremacy.
Well, they
typically.
might be. I don't know
Right.
that. But I guess they could use. You could bend evolution in such a way to make it say something like that. I agree.
Yeah.
So,
So,
like,
and I don't have any disagreement with you that a lot of them are religious. Absolutely.
there's German actual original historical Nazis who believe that basically there's Atlantis and the Aryans came from Atlanteans, and it was all part of a very, very neo-pagan thing Hitler was into and Heinrich Himmler. But the Americans tend to be more sometimes like there's Christian identity movement, which gets caught up in the Aryan Nation, Aryan Brotherhood, or the KKK. KKK are mostly Baptists, but the Aryan Brotherhood and Aryan Nation are very much neo-pagan, like the actual Nazis were. So it kind of depends on where you're at.
But you know what this group needs though is not just to be ignored, but Christians need to stand up,
Yeah,
and say, "Hey,
So
look,
that's
we
not
love
cool.
you guys. Like this is
Mhm.
like we want
that
you
group.
back when you're
Yeah.
ready. Like, and we got your back if you're being discriminated against and there's hate. Like, we're not going to put up with that. And that's what they really want is more Christians.
Are you
to do
talking about the
that.
Satanists or the
The
Nazis?
Satanists?
Oh, the Satanists.
Satanists want that. Like, if we see, you know, they shouldn't be so focused on these rare pastors and then overgeneralize to guys like Sean Foyt who have one slip up, right?
Mhm.
And say something they probably shouldn't have in the wrong way. But I feel like we do need to kind of take a harder stand. At least pastors need to stop being worried about being popular and start standing up for what's right in some cases. Because we all know it. We go to church, we hang out with family, and we have parents or in-laws or whoever just say things that they shouldn't that are really going to offend this type of demographic, and just is not nice. And this
It's
is my
unnecessarily
viewpoint.
hateful. So it's not necessarily something's not even not true. It's just like unnecessarily hateful, like the political stuff. I'm like you know,
Right,
I'm not
like-
very political, but Joe Biden's grandkid. I'm like, leave the kid out of it. Oh my goodness, I don't like the guy at all, but just leave his grandchild out of this.
Well, I mean, like if someone, I'll go as far to say as my interpretation of Romans 1 is that it's a judgment upon a culture possibly, and I can't necessarily blame someone if they are having gender identity problems. Like, we're all sinners. Maybe there's a judgment of God that they didn't necessarily put on themselves. Maybe they did, but I still think that we should have compassion and not treat them like they're not who they are.
Yeah,
right?
well,
Or
God takes
like-
no pleasure in the death of the wicked, so why should we? I mean, why should we run around happy about anybody suffering? I don't know.
But also, I mean, you said something interesting, P-Town. You said that we should just accept them for who they are, but we're trying to accept them for who they are. It's themselves who can't accept themselves for who they are. That's why they're trying to alter their identity. And my heart does break for them. Like, it breaks very badly because I know that they're suffering. And I've seen so many testimonies about people coming out of it and regretting it and confessing now that it did more damage emotionally than it ever could have done good, and just crying because now they're allowing this to happen to children. Like, it's gut-wrenching.
The suicide
agree with
rates
you.
through the roof.
But
I
I'm
agree
not
with
going to
you.
bow the knee and play the game. I can't
Well,
do that.
it's a tough issue because here's the deal. I completely agree with the kids thing, especially as many kids that are on antidepressants where their sex drive's getting killed at a young age and they're not being told
How
that. There's so
about
many
let's
factors
just
that
stop
come into play.
sexualizing our children, period? Why do we have to sexualize our children? We've
Well,
never had to
stop
do
giving
that
them
in
antidepressants
history.
that kill their sex drive and confuse them while they're going through puberty. There's so many different influences.
Well,
I
agreed,
think, that
and
go
there's
into this.
hormones in our food and our drinks and milk
It's the
especially.
McDonald's. It's the McDonald's effect.
Proverbs guy.
What's that, Grayson?
You don't have kids. I just say this not to be condescending, but at a certain point, you can't totally avoid sex with children. I would say that my kids, when they hit about 6, you have to start talking about gender identity and sex to some degree or another, whether you want to or not.
If your children are starting to ask questions about sex at 6 years old, you have them exposed to too many people, they have too much freedom watching television, or they've been exposed to something on the internet. No
Or
child
I
should
read nothing.
naturally, without without outside influence, no 6-year-old should be questioning gender or sexual orientation, period.
I didn't say they were doing that. I said they were questioning
Amen
sexuality.
to that.
I don't disagree
At
with you
6
necessarily on
years
that.
old, without outside influence, they should not be questioning sex, period. They shouldn't even
see it
know
because they
sex
raise
is a
animals.
thing.
They raise animals. They see it.
I didn't
So,
know about
let's
sex
not-
until I was 13 years
Okay.
old.
Well, he does live on a farm. That does
All right,
change
so,
the dynamic.
Besides
So
the
we should
6-year-olds, though,
clarify what Grayson's saying. Grayson, are you saying like boys, girls,
But they
playing
do-
a Barbie doll stuff? Or are you talking about like
I'm talking about innocent
where do babies come
children
from? Or
stuff
like
for the
deep
most part,
conversations about transgender? I know
No, I'm
Bill.
not talking about gender identity at all. I'm not.
Okay.
My children. I only have a single child, and she is she identifies entirely as a girl, and her mother is much more open to these sort of more liberal ideas than I am. So if she wanted to identify something else, she certainly would have. But as far as those conversations go, they were always very shallow because we basically only had to respond to the things that we see because we don't hide her from the secular world. And if you watch regular TV these days, unfortunately, you put on G-rated Netflix stuff, you're going to find people questioning their sexual identity. And why, I agree with you, why a preschooler needs to do that, I have no idea. However, I don't know. I guess that's I don't want to go into that too deep. But
Do
my
you
point
think
is,
it's the
I
Mc-
mean-
do you
general
think it's
sexual
McDonald's
questions
effect?
from kids
Do
come
you
up.
think it's the McDonald's effect where, let's get a Happy Meal when you're 5, so when you're 20, you're going to be so acclimated to this? Because we started you so young, you're not going to think it's strange.
I think some people treat it as people will propagandize anything. I agree with you.
Mhm.
I don't even watch Netflix anymore because it drives me crazy. Every show just has a formula. And I just don't like being force-fed things, even if I agree with them. It makes me
Well,
annoyed.
and to be totally fair to you, Grayson, you're right. Even if, shows I've put on Netflix that are G-rated kids movies for my son, I've caught very adult-themed stuff in it. So it is almost a losing battle. You're right about that, so that's fair.
So
But
Bill
that just
Marsden,
means you have to be more on top of it.
So Bill Maher's an atheist, and he came out and said, sometimes atheism has a slight advantage in very particular debates because there's less emotional attachment sometimes than more religious people. Because he's an atheist that comes out and says, I was 8-year-old, I want to be a pirate, and thank God no one plucked my eye out, gave me an eye patch, cut my leg off, gave me a peg leg, and bought me a parrot. Because he's like, I was 8 years old. Just because I say I want to be a pirate for a week doesn't mean you cut my leg off and replace it with a wooden stump. This is insanity.
But
children aren't old enough to make these decisions.
We have to understand the opposition's perspective, though.
Mm-hmm.
And we're talking about really young kids. Most of this is going to be once they become early teenagers, and because that's a crucial point from their perspective. Because if you can transition early, your appearance later on is completely different. So these, and this is just me. No Satanist has talked about this with me when I was there spending 2 days with them. But from the few people that I have run into, so I got distracted for my daughter, but they really wish that they had transitioned. If you see, they look close to actually like women, right? For example, for guys. I completely am against it. I think that God made them in His image, but I have to respect their opinion, in that sense. And I still think that we should approach them with love.
Is this the only?
Yeah.
I'm gonna be honest, and
no. And you know what? You can state your opinion. We probably agree. Steven, I mean, go ahead, unleash. It's okay.
Is this the only condition that you believe we should make consensus for? If somebody truly believed in their heart of hearts that they were Theodore Roosevelt, should we call him Mr. President? Where does the line get drawn?
It's their decision.
Between reality and playing house.
You can't make a law about it because this is not. This is a spiritual warfare. This is because
do we
they're
have
denying...
a law about it?
But do you have to make?
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Is right now in the southern countries, they're making it so you can't transition until you're 25. Otherwise, you have to pay out of pocket for your own health.
Well, here's the it's also a legal matter because someone's in prison.
Once you,
go ahead.
What I'm saying is that if we start making it political and start hindering their rights, How are we going to get the Bible back into schools? How are we going to get intelligent design and creationism offered in schools to our kids as just an alternative viewpoint? Let them know, that the Bible has authenticity and that it has predictive power. If we're going to go take rights away from people who are 24 years old, right?
Well, here's the thing: is
what are we doing?
Well, it becomes a legal issue because, like, someone's in prison at 22 years old. If they identify as a woman in California, they put a 6'2" grown man in a 6-foot long jail cell with a female inmate, and the female inmates are suing the state because they're getting raped left and right by these transgender males that demanded to be put in a prison cell with a woman, and they're molesting the women. So it becomes a huge legal issue. And while they're in prison, they get medical care, and they consider medical care transgender surgery. So they're in prison for robbing a bank, molesting their female inmate because they claim to be a female, and then they get to. This is interviews.
I'm sorry, but I don't believe. I don't buy it, and I think that they're going to call you out on this because
this is actual cases. This is actual
I believe
law.
you. I believe you, but I don't think it's left and right that there are men infiltrating by claiming that now they're women and just raping women in these prison systems relentlessly. I don't believe it. You'd have to show it to me.
Okay, well, probably find it online because it's happening. All women's inmates are suing the state of California left and right because they're being housed in cells with male inmates.
But
and it's
rape,
like NPR.
Though, I mean, come on. I mean, like, they're also inmates. They're probably lying most of the time. And no offense, but we have to assume they're not. But I'm saying I wouldn't jump to it. Okay. I mean,
well, this is the allegation, and this is just common sense. So if you put a 6-foot man, if you locked a female prison guard in there, and there's a dude in a dress, but he's still a dude, and 24 hours a day, and taking showers, and in a cell, 6-foot long cell, unsupervised with a woman, what's going to happen?
I think it's going to reverse on you, honestly, because if you put that transgender, I don't even know what to call it, guy or gal, whatever, it's a dude who thinks he's a chick, and you force him to go into the male prison system, who's going to get raped the most, right? Like, I mean...
Well, so we're disregarding the rights of one person because this guy wants to wear a dress. We don't know if he's actually attracted to females, men, or both, or maybe both, but we're going to totally disregard the rights of this other person to not hurt his feelings. Is a little bit... Sandy and I had this conversation with someone else the other day. It's like, so if someone identifies as a cat, do we get them a litter box at the public school bathroom? I mean, where does it... There is no end to it. Because we are. I used to work in mental health. For 3 years, I got people in mental hospital for a living. It's like if someone says they're Jesus, me taking them seriously is not helping them. It's furthering their psychosis.
Well, not just that, but this is just baffling to me that any Christian at all would go along with this game. In the Middle East, when they mutilate a child's clitoris, we call it an atrocity. But here, if some far-left liberal parent has put this idea in their child's head, we call it socialized population. What is it? I don't even know.
Well, you're wrong. You don't know the history of actually mutilating clitorises, though. It's been done onto babies for a long time. It was awkward in college. I actually sat through a documentary with a bunch of ladies. I went for the girls. And it was awkward watching clitorises on the screen and hearing about the history of they actually do this still to this day in America. It's just under the radar. Like, that's a standard procedure. If their clitoris is too big, they trim it off. They don't even tell the parents. They probably have changed it in the last 20 years. I hope so.
In the Middle East, mostly you're 13. Many times you're actually pre-pubescent teenager. In Africa, Central Africa. So where's the line? Is if it happens by a Muslim, it's okay. If a secular humanist wants to do it, then it's a protected right. Sorry, if a Muslim wants to do it, it's child abuse and terrorism, or something similar. But if someone does it because they happen to be secular humanists instead, that magically changes it. I think it's across the board. Child abuse.
We have to be aware of the one.
Hold on, P-Town. I want to get Ryan in because he's tried to get involved several times.
Okay,
Ryan.
Oh, I just said much love, Gladiator. Thank you for. I'm just listening in this evening.
Do you have any opinion on the matter? No. Okay, you're gonna stay out of it.
After Ryan, sorry, Ryan, I thought you were done.
What's that?
I thought you were done. I didn't mean to interrupt. I apologize. Sorry, I interrupted.
Okay.
Am I quiet?
What was the question, Proverbs?
No, I hear you, Grayson. Okay, so, well, just chime in whenever you're ready, Ryan. If you're on board, Grayson, do you want to go ahead and go to your question?
I just want a hypothetical, and keep in mind. You don't have to agree with what I'm saying because I tried to pose this on a similar hypothetical before. So just we're doing hypothetical here. I'm not caveat. Anyone who's answering this hypothetical may or may not agree with it. If we can identify in the womb that a child should be biologically male or biologically female, based on whatever it is. However, we are seeing that they are going to be born opposite of that. So, and we can make a medical change in the womb. Do you see that as unconscionable or something we ought to do? Just like if a child is going to be only have 11 fingers, and we can correct that in the womb. Should we?
Can I answer this one?
Sure.
Is it okay, Stephen? I think that I don't know why I choose to believe that I think there's a judgment upon a culture. Read Romans 1, tell me it's not about a group of people just like it was in the past. I think there's going to be these occurrences more and more. And if they're able to do that, and if it improves people's lives to where but they're going to still make mistakes. That's the thing, is doctors make mistakes when they have to choose. We have to be aware that there is a gray area on a very small percentage of people out there. And we just have to be cognizant of that, because we don't want to discriminate against the 1 in 1,000, right? Which is growing, it could be 1 in 100 now, where they have ambiguous genitalia.
That would be more like 1 in hundreds of thousands or 1 in millions.
That's what we're told, but is it though?
That's what's been historically, medically, for decades now. Unless someone's intentionally trying to alter themselves. But I agree, as a judgment on a nation, as the people lose they're so in. It's not just this one case like in Romans, but in Deuteronomy, the judgment on the nation is anxiety and terror, and people literally losing their minds. 40-something% of Americans are on mood-altering drugs. Like, most of them are antidepressants. It's a curse on the nation to have that level of anxiety in your country, because we have a culture that is so unbiblical, unnatural, so industrialized and material. It just defies how the humans are designed to function. Like, single-parent homes, this kind of stuff. This is not how people were made to operate. And it's going to cause all kinds of problems, not just gender confusion, but anxiety, depression, and all the rest of it. So I think it's part of the general mental health crisis on many ways of having mental health, not just gender dysphoria, but depression, anxiety, all that is part of the mental health crisis, between the chemicals, the isolated families, between, all that together is a cocktail for mass mental illness. So I don't want to single out the gender issue. I just think that's part of a bigger issue of mental illness, where there is a certain level of compassion, but accommodating it to the detriment of other people is not the answer.
Well, I guess my point was, and really this is my point, if we can do something, especially if ruling out doctors being wrong, because I agree, people are just wrong at times, but assuming that we're correct and we see there's going to be any sort of flaw in a child, an extra finger, maybe a deleted chromosome, and we can correct that in the womb, shouldn't we do that thing? I assume we should, right?
Why do we have to do it in the womb?
I don't say we
Wouldn't
have
it be
to.
safer and more proficient to do it outside the womb anyways, and just let the baby develop?
No, not if they're going to have a chromosome deletion or something. They'd just be born essentially dead.
Well, 11 fingers.
It's a very made up, rare hypothetical.
Right.
Well, of course, we can't do this thing.
Well,
so
let's work this out to its logical conclusion. So, let's say in the womb we can make genetic changes. Why even do it in the womb then? Why just do it? Why not just do it in a test tube?
Sure, it'd be ideal to do it. I have no problem with that. So you're saying, like, if we genetically engineer the egg, we genetically engineer the sperm, we introduce them, and we get the results we want. Humans are headed that way. And
at what point? Well, we've been there. It was called eugenics in the 1940s. Well, Hitler had literal breeding programs to make more blue-eyed, blonde-haired babies. He had camps to get women pregnant, to have more the SS officers to get women, because you'll be 6'6" being the SS.
That's kind of a
to get really tall, blonde-haired, blue-eyed babies. He just doesn't have the test tubes yet, so they had to wait to do it the old-fashioned way. And then at that point, if blue eyes and blonde hair is the ideal, then what happens to everyone who has dark hair and brown eyes? It wasn't genetically engineered, like Galactica. If you're not genetically engineered, you're an inferior citizen, and all you're useful for is picking up trash.
Can I just raise, like, get back to since I brought this up, can I bring it back to my original point? Because even talking about these extreme, in some cases made up situations, it's not the main issue. Honestly, I believe, just like the Bible describes, they are genuinely, they don't know what sex they are. They don't even know who they're attracted to. They flip-flop, you know? Like,
this wasn't an issue when I grew up in the 90s.
It wasn't. I witnessed it in my school.
I
never witnessed it ever, and I grew up in
I
Florida.
watched chicks flip-flop all the time, and guys.
Florida was a very
You watched
progressive
chicks
state compared to the
flip-flop.
rest of the South. Never saw it once. I saw homosexuals growing up, but even that was far and few in between.
I never knew somebody that thought they were a cat or a dog. Literally thought they were a cat or a dog.
Well, in fairness, probably,
you
guys must. They must be
growing up. Like I thought you said, you didn't know any like non-young Earth creationists for the most part. Like people, it seems like the people you were around had a fairly homogenous set of views.
I grew up in a very conservative county, but in
That's
Central
why
Florida.
Like I witnessed it. It wasn't that many, but it was enough. It was probably 1 in 40 kids were.
It was all force manufactured.
Where are you from?
It was force manufactured.
Washington.
You ever watch?
And I'm not even. I'm on the Republican side of the mountains. I'm telling you right now. I bet
it's still Washington. That's like saying I'm from the conservative side of Sodom and Gomorrah.
Well, it's like gospel saying is.
There's not
so
your
much
guys.
social pressure.
We should
so
be
much
aware
social
that.
Pressure to be gay.
I'm from the Christian part of Babylon.
Right. Well, they're also.
Dude,
it's
there
also
was
the
a lot
area
of. You're telling me, Ryan, it wasn't manufactured? Come on, bro. You even believed the lie.
Dude, you don't think it's coincidental that it started in populations like yours in the far corners of the country, like New York, the Florida Keys, way up in Washington,
It was force
parts of
manufactured.
California? Like they started it and started pushing the narrative in these pockets on the far reaches of the country, and then tried to slowly start spreading it to the in-country to where they have.
You have to consider the other argument is that the people didn't want to come out because they're scared because of the political climate.
Scared
That's their
of
argument.
what? I'm
Oh
from
my
Florida.
God, that is such
Disney
horse
This is
crap.
their argument.
Wait,
It's
no,
not mine.
no. I am from Florida. I lived 35 minutes away from Disney World, where they celebrated homosexuality since I was a child. My family was part of Baptist boycotts of Disney because they had gay day parades. So you can't tell me that they didn't want to come out because they weren't accepted. That's bull crap.
Yeah.
They've been
That is horse
accepted
crap.
for a long time. They haven't been celebrated like they're pushing now, but this is way past acceptance. This is forced tolerance.
I'm on the same page as you. I agree with you. I'm just telling you from their perspective, this is the case.
Do you
And
think it's pressure?
Well,
pressures as their child to become gay. It's cool to be gay. Like hip hop and being a gangster is cool now, even though it's like 20, 30 years ago.
I don't think it's cool. I think it's trauma because my wife deals with it all the time. She's an attorney for kids that parents are in trouble or parents don't want them or whatever.
Well,
they're
the
troubled kids.
illusion of
And
acceptance.
half of them are freaking don't know what they are. Like,
Well, it's the cool
they're
thing to
trying
do
to
now.
just-
It's the place to fit in. It's the place to be cool.
whatever it is, possibly a way to rebel. Like I don't know. It's just a thing, and then it breaks my heart seeing little kids that I know, like they're flip flopping right in front of my eyes. I mean, I saw one the other day that I've known since she was tiny. I think she got her boobs removed, like on a whim. I just saw her 6 months ago. I didn't want to mention it to my wife because I thought she would just die because she was her youth group counselor, counselor, right? But like, this is like she obviously had so many other issues leading up to it, but.
We see a progression of insanity between I'm a guy, I think I like guys, to I'm going to chop my thing off when I'm 15. My parents are celebrating it. To now I think I'm a cat and I need a litter box. I mean, this is the progression we went through in one generation of, okay, let's not be really, really mean to gay people. To, okay, let's let grown-ups, the government will pay for grown-ups to have altering surgery to remove the genitals. Now we're going to pay for teenagers. And if you don't like it, then you're a terrible person. Then on to, okay, now people think they're a cat or a dog, and we have to treat them like a cat or a dog. I mean, this is the level of insanity we went to in 40 years. It's nuts.
I think it's a direct correlation.
And we're ignoring the Ritalin. And we're ignoring the Ritalin factor. Is like, I mean, a lot of the antidepressants that we're pumping into our children nowadays. I mean, it's no wonder that they can't figure out who they are. They can't figure out how they feel.
They're zombie mode. Yeah, because you're flatlined emotionally.
Well, and they're
They
also
should be depressed.
stimulated on that stuff.
They need that
They're
depression to
stimulated.
really know
They're
who they
gonna
are.
Like they're flatlined.
No,
but
they
they're
need the
also stimulated.
antidepressants.
This is the whole problem, guys. Okay, we give our kids cell phones and wish them the best of luck at 10 years old. We give them drinks and food filled with hormones that are making them develop way faster than they ever did in the 90s when I grew up.
Mm-hmm.
I remember girls in the 90s being 16 and 17 before they started developing. Now
was an article
there's
that-
kids developing at 10.
That's the cover of Time magazine.
How old are you, Steve? Like,
I'm 33.
So there's
was
the cover.
born
I'm
in
34.
89.
Chicks were eating the high freaking steroid chicken, like where I lived. I don't know about you.
Well,
it
this
just
was on
farm
the-
chicken. Like,
Tyson. Tyson
this was on
chicken.
the,
Tyson.
this was on the cover of Time magazine about 5 to 10 years ago. They had a cover article about girls hitting puberty 4 or 5 years earlier than they used to, because of the hormones in the milk to make the udder. The cow has udders sooner, has bigger udders, makes more milk. The chicken breast has to be bigger, so it starts getting bigger, supernaturally bigger, much quicker, much younger as a chicken, and we eat those hormones. And then also the soy is terrible for boys. They put everything but soy increased estrogen levels in men.
oh yeah.
I mean,
I
just
saw
the
it.
boys
I
are getting
saw it lately.
estrogen. Yeah, the boys are getting estrogen basically pumped into them by the food, and the girls are hitting puberty 4 or 5 years earlier. So they're just their whole view of men is totally different because they feel
I
like they're
agree with you all
parenting
on
them.
that.
And then
Yeah.
on top
so they feel
of
like
all
they're
of,
parenting the boys that are 5 years behind in puberty.
and then on top of all of that, we're
So-
taking them to the library and having men dressed up as women come and do caricatures of what a lady is and sexualizing them at young ages on top of all these hormone injections we're artificially giving them from it's no wonder we're so messed up.
We don't go to the mental hospital and say, "Hey, this is Bob. Bob thinks he's the reincarnation of Jesus. Bob's going to read
Well,
you a
what
book."
you have to be aware that what you just said was offensive, though. Like
It is pretty
instantly.
offensive. I
You're
mean,
gonna
I
offend
chime
so
in,
many
yeah.
people.
Guys,
when you say
sometimes
that.
the truth
You
is
just need to be aware-
offensive. When King
not-
George
I made this
opened up our
mistake.
Declaration of Independence, you don't think he was offended, but that didn't change the matter that it was a fact.
But
But
should
that-
you
Truth
I
be
is
agree
the
with-
truth.
I agree with you, but in this particular case, this is a really sensitive crowd. Like I made this mistake with the Satanists because they were going to do a drag show. All I did, because I didn't know what a drag show was, I just asked this guy who's apparently identifies as a chick, who's named Riley, hey, I'm just curious, like, are you gonna, I don't know what I said, like, are you gonna be exposed at all? And instantly, I was hated by everyone. They even brought it out in their, like, I just didn't know what a drag show was. I just assumed
So is
that
that
it would
your
be.
fault or their psychosis?
The
Even
thing
if
is
there's
it turns
psychosis,
out the
what
drag
was your
show was
goal?
not.
Right.
Apparently, a drag show is not sexual most of the time. It's not like what we get pumped out on from their perspective. Like this wasn't
They're
too
usually
sexual.
barely dressed. Or,
right. So I
the
didn't
ones
think
that
it was
don't.
I didn't. So I got corrected and I asked, well, so what should I have asked? Since I just wanted to know if I could watch it. And they said, you should have asked me what I was going to wear tomorrow. I'm like, I'm
Hey,
sorry.
hey,
I'll work on it.
advocating drag
Like-
show stream guy, but I
P-Town.
did have a hard time
P-Town,
showing
do
a scantily dressed drag show.
P-Town, do you maybe consider the possibility that you're being mentally reprogrammed a little bit?
I don't think so because I don't think so. I think that everything that I believe is backed simply by the Bible. That's everything that I check it on.
Do you
Like,
remember a few
do you want me to
episodes
do?
ago when I told you that when Christ sent out the apostles, he sent them out in pairs of 2? Because you're able to help keep each other strong that way, and you won't start reverting to the pagan ways while trying to witness and look back one day and realize, oh, I'm doing everything the pagans do. We need accountability, brother. That's why I invite atheists to come on my show, but they come on my show where I can make sure there's more believers than unbelievers. So we maintain some sort of level of accountability with one another, and we can bring each other back to scriptures, which ultimately is how we should be guiding our lives, not who we offend. What we should be worried about is, are the actions we're taking offending our God? And I would say yes. When we play along with these types of narratives, we're offending our God, and that terrifies me a lot more than offending people.
You know, maybe I'm
I'm
wrong.
just gonna say.
Maybe I'm wrong, but I
I'm
don't
just
think
gonna
so.
say.
And I'm here, aren't I? I'm here asking if I'm wrong. And you're welcome
I'm
to
just gonna
fly
say
in
when you.
and come to Satanist rallies with me if you want, anytime. Everyone's welcome.
I'd like
Go
to
ahead,
give a
Gospel.
dissenting opinion whenever there's a free spot. I know you've been trying for a while. Gospel, go ahead.
I'm just gonna say when you lay with dogs, you catch fleas, man. Yeah, I don't think I will be joining any of the Satanist things. I've been there, bro. I've been there. I've done that. I know all about it. Do me a favor. Watch what you're eating, okay?
Desensitization.
Yeah, Jesus never hung out with any shady people.
Asparagus
He
and
just like,
steak.
forget you shady people. Prostitutes. I'm not going to hang out with prostitutes and money changers. I hate those
No,
people.
but what's
Well, he
interesting,
didn't do it all day
Grayson,
every day, though. He didn't
But I'm
do it
not
all day
saying he
every day.
became like them.
not just that, but you never see anywhere where Jesus just went and hung out with somebody in a shady building alone. He always had
I
apostles
agree.
with him, and at
I
times
agree.
he had thousands of believers with him. So like it wasn't like Jesus one-on-one.
And I probably think it's, if you want to, unless you're very secure in your faith, I probably wouldn't go one-on-one into a bunch of people who
Even
have
if
different
you
beliefs.
are, even
That's what
if
the Apostle
you,
Paul talked about. Grayson is don't do that. It's like what you're saying. It's like, yeah, you don't try to reach this person and get drugged down by them. Like you try to help a drowning person, they're probably going to drown you.
However,
Unless you're on the boat
I
with a
sat
pole.
there and I told them offensive stuff to their face, and I said, I believe in it because of the Bible. This is what the Bible says. And they were okay with it. They were okay with it. As long, like
you
they
are
said,
going to
thank
be
you for the
offending
time.
their worldview at some point, just based on the things you believe. They're so different than a lot of
They
things.
know it's
believe.
offensive. They know,
Right.
but at least they appreciate you doing
Correct.
it in a loving and respectful manner.
So I guess you just don't need to have extra offensive you don't need. If you don't want to call me a she because I identify as a woman, then don't. Call me Grayson. Call me whatever thing you want. You don't have to capitulate to my ideas and agree with me. But you don't need to be, if you want to win me or to have me want to continue to engage with you, then you just be kind. I guess that's what you should do. Just be kind.
Being intentionally offensive is one extreme, but also surrendering everything just to not offend someone is the other extreme. There is a lot of intentionally offensive things that happen. And then the result of that is making people harder to reach. If you're intentionally trying to be offensive, like that people do. But of course, if you have no backbone and you just kind of whatever they say do, you do, then also they don't respect you, so that's even harder to reach. But those are two ditches of the, there's a ditch on the right and a ditch on the left. And
Well,
one's right, one's ditch on the left.
I'm in the midst telling him I believe in the Bible. I believe it's literally true. I believe in a literal Adam and Eve, a literal flood, 6,000 years as far as I can count when I did the genealogies. And I defend these things right in the center of Satanist groups.
I believe you do
right?
that.
I mean, and so
that takes a lot of courage.
And so it's not like I'm not bold, and I'm not afraid of being offensive if I have to be. But we're all on the same page. I try to play somewhat of a devil's advocate because I do think understanding things from their perspective is vital.
I totally understand what you're saying because I have personally caught a lot of flack for welcoming atheists onto my channel. And it's something I've defended, and I think I've exhibited fruit from it. So I'm proud to do that and keep fighting for it. So I get it, P-Town. But I would strongly advise you to try to find a gospel buddy locally to do this with you.
I had one, he quit. I had one I loved, he quit. So if anyone wants to do it,
Where do you live at?
and
if you're qualified, so I'll qualify.
Are you in Eastern Oregon? Is that what you said, or Eastern Washington?
I live in Western Washington.
Western Washington. Okay.
But
I know the Eastern side.
He's a stone's throw away from me.
Conservative. Oh, well, there you go.
But you don't want to do it.
No,
I forgot. You guys
could
were
just come hang out.
No.
Yeah.
So
I
Ryan has.
can't, dude.
Dustin.
No, it's okay.
So,
I get it. It's
so
okay.
Ryan has lived life experience as a whole podcast about a lot of this stuff. So I'd love to hear his input.
Maybe you are the one then.
Well,
I was an atheist once. It's partly why
Hold
I don't
on,
know.
P-Town. We're going to let Ryan take the floor for a moment, and then we'll get back to this.
Yeah, Pete Tone, I really admire you for what you're doing. I think that's really wonderful. I'm afraid I couldn't actually join you physically. I'm on the opposite side of the country from you, but we have to go out into the world. We can't only associate with people who are just like ourselves. You can't win the loss that way. And so you doing what you're doing is going to that is going to it's letting your light shine. Speaking the truth in love, letting your light shine in the darkness. And I admit I probably don't do that enough. I mean, well, when I'm working, I do wear Christian biblical things on my wrists and on my head sometimes, and I try to let people know that I am a believer, and I've never really had anybody be hostile towards me as a result. I do live and work in a pretty conservative area, but I'm always prepared for someone who does have a hostile response, and I can say, well, why do you feel that way? Let me tell you why I believe the way I believe. That's really yet to happen so far. Either I get no reaction to what I'm wearing, or I get a positive reaction. Just like yesterday, I was wearing the rainbow T-shirt, taking back the rainbow, and I had some positive reactions.
Can I ask you about that, Ryan?
Sure.
Have you come across any homosexuals that have been offended by that shirt?
Not yet. I haven't worn it that much. I did wear it this past weekend.
Oh, okay.
Rabbi Schneider told us to wear it. And I actually, last night, I went to Logan Smith's concert, and there was some people who were there, who shall go unnamed, who I think would identify as homosexual, but they did not have a negative reaction to the T-shirt. They had a positive reaction, because all the T-shirt says is that the rainbow belongs to God. Yeah, these are people that I've known for years.
Oh,
Do they not get the context, or do they just not care?
No, I think they
don't understand that we are on a spiritual crusade to liberate God's rainbow.
Right.
That's
I'm
true.
just glad we're not going to get flooded again. I see that rainbow.
I wore the T-shirt, and I told a couple of people I'm wearing this because Rabbi Schneider told me that he wanted us to wear it this weekend, and I didn't have any negative reactions. I just had some people say, "Yeah, okay, well, the rainbow belongs to God." And now these are people who are in a Christian environment who might nevertheless live as homosexuals, and so they're not going to be openly hostile.
I'll make you a deal, Ryan. You buy us both tickets to Disney, and we'll go on Gay Day and wear those shirts, and we'll bring tracks with us.
I'll record from a distance.
Record, Grayson.
From a distance.
If I would do that.
Yeah, we'll bring tracks.
I have another shirt that could possibly be controversial. Hold on just a moment.
Wow, we're not going to get into controversial T-shirt comparisons. I feel like Gospel Gladiator would have us all beat, but Dream Guy could have skeletons in his closet.
Oh, I've got a whole graveyard in there. So
from your dead self.
You want story time? You tell you story time.
I will probably be wearing this weekend at the Ark Encounter.
Nice.
Which is a very conservative environment.
Yeah.
But I have actually worn this outside of that environment, and I haven't really had any negative reactions yet. But
good.
I haven't worn it
well, Ryan, Dream Guy says he has a story to share with us.
Well, so I was just going to tell you. So Ryan, of course, if you heard his show, Ryan used to be in a homosexual lifestyle and came out of it, and we discussed this previously when he was on our show. We're interviewing about his testimony, which is awesome. And growing up in high school, one of my best friends was gay. I never knew it. I knew what gay meant in high school, and I found out towards the end of high school. It's like, oh, okay. And I had two bosses at the grocery store I worked at. One was very Christian, Baptist, conservative, super conservative, right wing guy, church member. And the other one was gay. His boyfriend came in there all the time, et cetera, et cetera. And my mom died as 14. And my mom knew both of them in high school. And my mom was the only person who treated the gay supervisor maybe decently in high school. She's one of the few that treated him decently in high school. So she died when I was 14, and he ends up giving me a job because I didn't have a car or anything. He's hard to get to a job when I was like 15, 16 this time. One of the few people would give me a job, and I worked there for 3 or 4 years. And my shoes are literally falling apart in high school. The soles are falling off my shoes. I had to glue them together every night. And he told the deli ladies to let me get food. He bought me some shoes, bought me some clothes, and treated me so much better than the Christian conservative. I go to the Baptist church. They were actually cousins. These guys were cousins to each other. They inherited the business from their fathers, who were brothers, and their cousins. So they both owned the same grocery store, which is like some kind of sitcom waiting to happen. But the homosexual one treated me so much better than the Christian conservative guy. But since I had a friend who was gay, and I didn't know he was gay, didn't know what it meant, and I wasn't super manly in this little redneck town growing up, people thought I was gay for years. My parents thought I was gay.
Huh.
My adopted dad asked me, like, you're not gay, son? It's okay if you are. I'm like, I'm not, I promise. I just don't like watching wrestling. I don't drink Budweiser. I just don't play football. Is that okay with you? Not just him, but a lot of people had this compression. So I was treated like someone that was gay in a small town, even though I wasn't.
Right.
People thought I was because I'm just not super alpha male redneck.
Right.
And that's the only paradox they have is you're a super alpha male redneck or you're gay. This is it. There's only 2 options. So you're not one, you must be other. So I went through a lot of that kind of treatment, but I've had a lot of homosexual people that are very kind to me when the Christians weren't, because I wasn't a believer till later in life. And also I've been on the environment where treated like they would treat someone who was gay, chased off the playground, this whole thing. But I didn't know what it meant at the time. They just thought, well, you don't watch wrestling and throw footballs. This must be you.
Yeah.
So I have some compassion for that. Now I don't have worked in mental illness. Like I'm trying to separate the issues too between someone that has a same-sex attraction, which is a whole long list of things that could cause that and whatnot, and someone who literally thinks they're trapped in a completely opposite body, where that be another human of a different gender. Or they think they're a cat or a dog, and they literally think this. That's a whole separate world to me from like attraction to the same sex versus someone literally thinks they're a dog or a cat, or they're obviously male but think they're a female. That's different.
I would appreciate if you stop making that analogy. I'm going to leave. It really is. It's unnecessarily offensive. I understand you don't, but referring to people who question identity as people who think they're cats and dogs, that's unnecessarily offensive. I prefer.
Well, this is the whole movement together, all banding together. The furries, as they're called, or teaming up. Everyone has to affirm us and our belief. If I'm a boy, I think I'm a biological human male, and I literally think I'm a biological human female, or I'm a biological human male, and I think I'm a male cat or a male dog. You're thinking you are something completely anatomically.
A furry doesn't think they're a dog.
Medically are. Lots of people are called furries. There's a whole movement of them.
They wear fursuits and they have a sexual kink, but they don't literally think they're animals.
No, there are people who literally they're out there. They think
and those people are literally mentally ill. So we're talking about different things. Like unquestionably.
I'm not talking about someone being kink. I'm talking about people literally thinking this, which is a large movement now.
Well, hold on. That is interesting, Grayson, because you did, which is very hard from the left side, I feel like. So I appreciate you doing it. You did draw a distinct line somewhere in the sand that crosses mental illness. And I do appreciate you. I don't agree with you where that line is drawn, but I appreciate you being honest enough to draw a line.
And there is a difference between sexual preference and actually believing something that is objectively not true. And I agree there's a difference there.
I feel like we have to
be offensive unnecessarily. I'm just asking that you stop making an analogy. I'm on that thing. You can make it all you want. I'm not here. Please just. I understand your point. It's just not necessary.
Okay. Well,
Dream guy. Let me just.
Good.
I just spent a weekend with these folks, and it's the extremism that they're rebelling to, because they could throw the same extremism back at us. The furries, they have a weapon against us too. And I think it's both Satan doing it, to be honest with you, infiltrating the Christian, ranks. I mean, I think the extremism on the other side. So even the subtle comment of referring to them, someone who thinks they might be attracted to someone else versus them thinking that they're a furry is offensive.
Well, I'm making the distinction. You guys aren't hearing the distinction between sexual preference. Between objectively in your mind, literally thinking you are a entirely different being biologically.
And I
That's a different thing
understand,
from
I understand where
attraction.
your heart was. I understand where
Yeah.
your heart was. I'm not accusing you.
Mhm.
I'm saying is that to the people on the other side are going to find that extremely offensive. That's it.
Okay, I
Well-
think though the point that Dream Guy was trying to make is like, can anyone count how many genders we're pretending exist now? We know since the beginning of time, since the Garden of Eden, there has been 2 genders, male and female. And now there's like 38, 40, possibly 50.
And historically, it didn't exist. The Romans and the Greeks might have been same-sex attracted, but they didn't literally think they are literally something else.
And
That's
this is going
new.
this is going beyond people who identify as the opposite sex. These are completely new genders.
Grayson.
I don't disagree with you, Proverbs guy. I'm just saying that particular comparison, it's not going to win you any converts, and it's not going to make people think you're a compassionate, loving person.
I can't believe I'm agreeing with
articulate and
Grayson.
disagree in a kinder way. That's my point.
You guys are missing,
What I did?
like, the Christians
not
are
you.
missing my point. Like, Grayson, you, like, we're on the same page, actually, for the
I
first
agree.
time. Like,
Yes,
like,
Pete, this
our
is about
point
best conversation.
is that it's offensive. It's not that you're
Right.
wrong.
Grayson.
Because you
made
can do
a
the same
comment.
thing. You can do the same thing by accusing Christians and pointing out different demographics and
Well, guys,
overgeneralizing.
let's let Ryan speak up. He's been trying
Can I
to
just
chime
give
in.
a little clarification? Grayson, you said my boyfriend thought I was also, he was very confused.
I was just making a joke. He said that the people thought he was homosexual. And so I was just jokingly said my boyfriend thought I was also. He was very confused. It was, just a bad
Okay,
joke. It didn't land.
I
It
was
didn't
just-
land.
I was making sure you were just kidding.
No,
there.
No, I've had same-sex relationships, but I have never identified or been a homosexual.
Okay. Well, I mean, a same-sex relationship
What?
doesn't necessarily
Yeah.
mean. I mean,
Oh, man.
if
What?
you've got a buddy who's a guy and you're a guy, that's the same-sex relationship, but it's not
Well,
necessarily.
no, let's let
a
him
same-sex.
clarify.
Well, they weren't
let
consensual.
him
Most of
clarify.
them weren't consensual. That helps you understand.
Let's let him clarify. Yes. What do you mean by that? Because let's let
Like,
Grayson talk
how much
about this.
detail do you want to get in? I mean,
I want to know everything.
I lost my
No,
virginity to my
no,
father.
no,
If you
no.
know that.
No,
This is why I want to know.
we're gonna
It's not
regroup.
this is-
Right, it's a little rough for this, but yeah.
Yeah,
sorry.
we're gonna regroup, Grayson.
Okay.
Sorry, P-Town.
No,
I had
no,
to. I
no,
had
no.
to. I had to redirect that conversation.
My
to them.
questions have been
Yeah.
answered.
It's a real important issue.
My questions have been answered.
I have a question for P-Town.
You guys are redirecting on an important issue. I just experienced with a bunch of Christians at a camp. A lot of them were abused when they were children.
I
and
have
they were confused
specific.
by their.
I have specific shows,
All right.
panels that I run during the week that are a lot more open, and people are able to speak their minds. Tonight's episode is not one of my regular panels. Tonight's episode is a show that I co-host with Dream Guy. We had guests call out last minute that we had to reschedule, so we decided just to host a short panel, but it's not the same style panel I direct. So we have to keep that in mind, gentlemen.
I'll be happy to answer the questions on an appropriate panel.
I didn't know that, and I respect that.
Yeah, and you guys know you're both welcome. You've been on my panel, both of you, multiple times.
Proverbs, can I answer his question in a very vague way that won't be offensive?
Yes.
I have never been confused about what I'm sexually attracted to, and I was abused as a child, so
I'm
it did
sorry
not
that happened
confuse
to you,
my sexual
Grayson.
attraction.
You're one of the lucky ones.
I was never confused in that way. I just I'll leave it at that. We'll ask more questions another time. But I think that might
was
answer
answered very tastefully, and I appreciate that, Grayson.
Can I ask a question to Grayson, or am I
If you guys can
overstepping?
just keep it tasteful like Grayson did, sure.
Yeah, I mean, I assumed where he was going to go with it because I just witnessed it. Can I ask you, Grayson, was it self-proclaimed Christians that did it?
Oh no, it was my father.
No,
and he's just a mean old drunk. He was not a Christian.
Gotcha. Okay. Thanks.
No, yeah, and it just taught me that there, unlike my father, lots of men were interested in things that young boys had, and it could be financially lucrative to abuse that. And I'll just leave it at that. Well, that's why I made that statement.
Our panel tonight was going to be 2 victims of trafficking. Actually, one of them was domestically trafficked in a similar fashion you're describing. And I'm really sorry you went through that. That's terrible.
Yeah,
terrible thing
trafficking.
to go
Yeah,
through.
that is a rough thing. Like I did not go through any actual trafficking or any trading in that nature, but yes, it.
But it's called domestic trafficking. Like if you're quote basically sold or traded to someone
That's what I
in the
mean.
U.S.
Right, right.
A neighbor
Like,
or father's
correct.
friends, whoever. That's domestic trafficking. That's actually
Yeah, that
trafficking.
happened to my neighbor girl. She used to. We were real good friends. Her dad also had some issues, but he would share her with his friends. And yeah, I understand. It's gross.
Yeah, that's domestic trafficking. But people have went through a lot of stuff, and no one's saying people haven't been through horrible things, and this hasn't affected things, and no one wants to be compassionless. But at what point does accommodating something that is not reality by definition of psychosis helpful or not helpful? But it's not. People should not be intentionally hurtful. Intentionally hurtful doesn't help. Not
Right, that was my point with you earlier. You seem like you're a nice guy. I wouldn't want to. You just don't want to make people think that you disagree. I assume that it's fine to disagree with people and to let them think, "Hey, I disagree. I think you're wrong," versus saying, "I think you're wrong and you're an idiot for it." And I think that when
I say it's mental health wise. This is by definition psychosis when you fundamentally think something's objectively true and it's not true. Attraction is not an objective thing; it's a subjective thing. But objectively, if you
no one is a cat,
have left reality, that's psychosis, and that's not helping people to endorse psychosis in any fashion whatsoever. Ever, like someone thinks they're Superman, you fly off the building. I'm not going to encourage them to jump off the building.
But I don't think this whole argument is about. I think it's more about semantics than you would like to admit. And that is really what you have. And I can see why you don't want to make concessions. I think a lot of it is about semantics.
To be fair, though, what we started the conversation off of was the left militarizing the transgender in our schools and libraries.
I agree. It is overly represented, and it probably to a degree that's harmful to both the transgender movement as a whole and to maybe some innocent victims as a whole. I am not a mental health professional, and I don't speak on things I'm not comfortable with. I guess that's why I am not certain on this issue. I could be persuaded either way, but I will definitively say you shouldn't harm children, and I recognize that you guys see this for the most part as a harm to children, and that's why you're so adamantly against it. And I recognize that it comes from a place of goodness. I also recognize that you want to win people to Christ. You just got certain things you say that you're just going to slam the door. Because
we're not doing it. I guess not on same-sex attraction. It's on fundamentally believing you are something different biologically, which you are transgenderism, which I separate from same-sex attraction. I think transgenderism is a whole different thing entirely. It's about transgenderism.
So you think that anyone who identifies, let's say, all right, let's play devil advocate. And I do this, and I hate when people use like rare scenarios, but I'm going to use one. So a certain number of people are born trans are intersex. You agree with this? It's just happened.
Hermaphrodites, and like one in maybe literally a million.
Yes, it is incredibly rare. I agree. I admit that. So let's say that you were born and your parents decide, you know what? Because that's what happens. The parents have to usually make a decision. At least that's what used to happen. I don't know what happens now. And they say,
used to when they're kids.
And they probably still do in the most part. So they say, all right, we're going to pick boy. And then this child grows up and they're a girl. They want to be a girl. In this scenario, do you think that they're mentally confused, or do you think the parents made the wrong choice? And who is to make that?
Did the doctors not check their chromosomes?
They sometimes they have a weird set of chromosomes that also don't answer the question. You'd have to look at it.
And historically, that wasn't a possibility until recently. But there's a biological reality that's observable and objective for that. I woke up one day and I felt in my head like I had these parts that don't exist on me. I'm biological. Something else. There's an objective, biological, observable by other people reality that you can test, and it's objective that tells you you're in the real world. Versus,
but this is like what I'm saying
only in the
mind.
beginning.
This is what I'm saying in the beginning. Like, this is straight up Romans 1, as far as I can tell. Like, it's so literal, it's crazy. Like, when I first read that verse, I never thought it was going to actually be like this. People literally think they're that confused. But my interpretation of that scripture is it's a judgment upon a culture, just like it was during the Romans time and just like it was in Babylon. Like, we're heading in this direction, and we're going to see more and more of it.
And I tie that with Deuteronomy 28 and 30, where this is the only aspect of that judgment there were multiple others in Deuteronomy 28-30 about if your nation goes this way, this is the cause and effect on your nation, is this will be a common thing. Terrorism is a common thing. Anxiety where you can't function is a common thing. All these things are going to, and the whole nation be completely in debt is going to be a common thing. These are all consequences of the decisions of your ancestors collectively as a nation. And 3 generations later, this is what you're going to end up with as a nation.
And I'll put it this way, and it might blow your mind if you could have been there with me. But I only talked to a handful. I talked to a lot of Christians, but there was only a select few that would stop, and I introduced them to Aaron. And the one group that I introduced them to turned out they have a transgender kid, and they did a gender-affirming ceremony with the Satanists for the kid. They were Christians.
Well, that's where
you
it ends
would you never would have saw this coming. Like, it was just out of just showing respect to the people who are playing Halloween for fun, in essence.
And that is exactly
Saying,
why I will not affirm it.
I'm saying that but before they decided to do that, I didn't even see that. I didn't see that happen, but I was told that happened. But I got to talk to these people who were Christians that drove all the way from Spokane all the way to Olympia, which is about 6.5 hour drive. They're like, we have a transgender kid. Like, it was no big deal. And I mean, I just think that we're going to experience more and more of this, and I don't know how to handle the issue. Like, I think we have to have some sort of compassion.
Compassion, yes. But that's much different from, like, embracing their judgment and encouraging it and just having them accepted. Wouldn't it be more loving to try to get our brethren out of that judgment?
If you truly love someone, you will hate their sin, and you'll try to encourage them to also hate their sin. You don't love a person by affirming their sin.
And you can respect them without affirming their sin.
Right. As a person, say, I love you, but I believe that you are wrong.
Right. And that, I agree with you. And it's how do we do that? Right? Because there's different levels.
Well, part of where the church has got in trouble too is we're going to point out the sins of people not in the church. Preaching to the choir. If it's something the church is doing, the churches love gluttony, gossip, greed, all kinds of things the church loves, and no one has any opposition to. It's fine. We're only upset about what people outside the church are doing. And when we do that, the church loses all its credibility.
Yeah, if a person is not a believer, then you have to have a completely different conversation. Mm-hmm. You don't address specific sins of a person if they're not a believer. Only if they are a believer. You don't condemn a person for using foul language if they're not a Christian, or you don't rebuke them. You don't rebuke a person because first they have to become a Christian.
Yeah, so Paul said that they'll judge stuff inside the church, not outside the church.
Yeah,
the world's going to the world.
Yeah, you bring the person to Christ, and then hopefully, then God will begin to identify sins in a person's life. It was only this year that I realized I had committed idolatry. I never knew it until this year, and God showed me that sin. He showed me that I had done that. And I said, I'm so sorry, Lord. I was wrong to have committed that sin. So, a person can be a Christian for a long time before they realize that they have certain sins in their life. But God, if they are truly committed to God and they want to live for him, he will identify the sins that they have in their life. And he will let them know that they need to, he'll help them work on getting rid of that sin.
But there's a different thing. Pointing it out is different from just wholesale endorsing it. Like, oh, that's great. That's wonderful. Go ahead, guys.
Fine. But imagine this for a second and try to imagine this. You have a kid who believes that they are transgender, who is a Christian, says they're a Christian. And how do you, politely say that you're in sin, but I still love you? You're walking the line a little bit, right? I mean, how do you do that? You have to put yourself in their shoes, in a sense. Or am I wrong?
No, you're being a parent. No, you're being a parent.
Yeah.
you're being a parent. If you're telling your kid you're not a child, or you're not the sex that you choose to be, you're being a parent, right? Like I think you're trying to distinguish the difference between what might be considered legal or illegal, and I mean that's even still a gray area.
And it's like Bill Maher's analogy, who is a liberal Democrat atheist, definitely not a believer, said when he was 8 or 10, he thought he was a pirate. So he's thankful no one cut his leg off and replaced it with a piece of wood. You know, pluck his eye out, give him an eye patch because he's 8 years old and thinks he's a pirate. I mean, the adults are there to prevent children from self-harm.
Not just that, but the only cases I'm aware of personally where Christian families are battling that problem, it's very rare, and the kids are older. They're like older teens. None of them are kids, because in Christian homes, when you're growing up, you get told what's right and what's wrong. You get told the simple things, that you wear your right shoe on your left foot, that boys wear boy clothes, that girls play with Barbies, that boys don't wear makeup. These are just basic human developmental things that are taught and handed down for 6,000 years now. It doesn't have to change. It shouldn't change. It's just madness. It's not compassionate to just accept this madness.
Some of the things you listed were just cultural things, like men wearing makeup. So you think if I have a pimple and I covered up with some blush, I'm somehow sinning?
I think that's very different, and I think you could draw the difference.
No, I get what you're saying. You're saying that women, men. I get it. You're making the analogy that a man should.
No, I'm talking about children. Children. So teaching children.
Okay, I guess the makeup thing threw me off. I agree with a lot of things. It just seems like you're teaching gender roles, which is fine.
No, I have kids. I'm just trying to protect the children.
P-Town, why do you insist on blurring the line, man? Why do you insist on doing that? I have to. It's kind of an obsession at this point.
No, mostly what I'm doing is I'm learning from you guys. Like I take a firm stance on what I believe, but you can still be compassionate and respectful because they're in sin, right? Most of the time, but you can still take a firm stance and be kind. What they don't want is laws being pushed on them. And so when
they're the ones pushing all the laws, so they're pushing all the laws on everyone else. Like your taxes have to pay for their surgery, or we have to house them with female inmates when they're biological males, or we have to let them. Okay, you can compete in girls' sports even though you're a boy and you're a foot taller. They're the ones pushing all the laws.
You're saying those things right there, they're not bigoted. Hold on. Those things right there, they're not bigoted. Okay, they're very valid concerns, and you're trying to say that we're being offensive to somebody. Those things don't compute, dude. I mean, we're just trying to keep a certain semblance. We're just trying to keep a certain semblance of normal, or whatever it has been for the last 6,000 years.
No, well, what hasn't been historically? That's what I'm saying is I'm going to toss scripture at you. What I'm saying is there's a judgment by God on a culture. There's a specific judgment on a culture. So what I'm saying is possibly this is
nowhere in Scripture, P-Town, does it say that we should affirm people in that judgment. That's just
I agree with you, but we
ludicrous.
should still acknowledge that it's still a judgment from God, and it doesn't necessarily mean they did anything wrong.
It just says he gave them over to their own vices. He gave them over to a reprobate mind. He gave them over to their own sin.
I'm throwing it out there. I'm saying it might be God's fault because he's generalizing to a culture, not just a person.
See, and that's
why I keep saying it.
That right there,
throwing it out there.
That right there sounds like Morning Star to me, bro. That sounds like absolute rebellion, and that sounds like witchcraft.
It's God's fault. So if I rob a bank, it's God's fault. If I do any other sin, it's God's fault. God gave us over to theft, or God gave us over to this or that. So it's God's fault, and it's not my fault anymore.
Dive into Romans 1 with me, and then prove me wrong, because I was.
He let them do what they wanted. He did not restrain them from doing this thing they wanted to do. but God didn't program them like a robot to go out and do this, that, or whatever. Because we have to separate. It's not a peculiar sin. I mean, homosexuality and transgender, it's not necessarily peculiar. There are other sins that people do that God might not restrain them from doing, but it doesn't. There's no free pass for one particular sin and not the other. Because God made me do this. All the rest of you, you're going to hell because you chose that. But this one, God made me do it, so it's not his fault. And God does not tempt anyone, because God does not tempt anyone to sin. So that doesn't compute biblically.
I also don't understand. I don't understand why believers are being forced in a corner to affirm the alphabet sin, but like we're not put in a corner and told we can't call thieves a thief because they don't want to identify as a thief. They find that offensive. So like we can't use the word thief. We have to be like, hey, you person who just took something from my house that does not belong to you. Like, come on. Actually, we don't do that for any other sin.
But that just
we're making a middle.
And then there's
it's like
someone's got to go and open up their Bible to Romans 1 and tell me I'm wrong, because
I just told you wrong. Kleptomania is what we. It's not just mental health diagnosis. So if someone steals compulsively, we call it a mental illness, and that's called kleptomania. You're right or wrong. But this situation, we can't call it a sin or a mental illness. Either God made them do it, or it's perfectly logical to imagine you have biology that you don't.
He's not saying that.
It's a free pass for everything.
He's saying you can call them that. Do it in such a way that you're not making more dissension when you don't have to. Obviously, you disagree, and no one's asking you to affirm it.
He's saying like any level of dissension is pretty much offensive and hateful. So I'm not. It's like saying I'm not saying you can't tell the truth, but I'm really saying you can't tell the truth because you do it any kind of way, it's going to be offensive. And this one particular people, we can't offend them. We can offend the rest of the world, just not this one group of people.
What in Romans 1 am I reading?
Can you zoom in a little bit for me since I'm on my phone?
Oh, my Lanta.
There's another aspect of this that you're not allowing anybody to broach, is that you're trying to control speech, right? If I wanted to impress my laws upon the LGBT community that they couldn't discuss their sexual orientation in private because it might offend me, they'd tell me to take a hike. I feel you're, you know.
Who are you talking to here?
I have Romans 1 pulled up. What are we looking at?
D-Town and Grayson.
Oh, I don't let me. Sorry, you can say whatever you want. I just said that I disagreed with being what I thought was purposely offensive, and I was just going to leave. But I can leave. This is your show. I'm a guest here. I'm glad to be here, but I'm not telling you what to or not to say. I'm just telling you what to me is uncomfortably offensive. I understand you disagree with it. You can say whatever you want. I'll just leave. Actions have consequences. Consequences, I leave. No harm, no foul.
We're just reading from the scripture.
Grayson,
well, not
there's no action.
What
here.
we're doing right now is edifying. We're edifying each other, and it can look aggressive sometimes. But I think it's 18, and I'm on my phone. I can't quite see it.
Okay, this is 18.
Let me guess.
For the wrath.
All right. For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who suppress the truth in unrighteousness.
It's okay.
So it's against all these individual men. That's individually.
This can't be what you were trying to say. Yeah, I agree with them. It's got to be something else you want to point at.
This can't be.
You have to keep. You have to. Oh no! You have to keep reading. Sorry, I'm way.
From 18 to what?
I'm not sure. I'm outside behind the barn. Let's see.
Oh, okay. 19. Because that which is known about God is evident within them. For
it's
God
26.
made it evident to them. It's 26?
Keep going, yeah.
Here we go. For this reason, God gave them over to a degrading passions. For their women exchanged the natural function for that which is unnatural. And in the same way, also the men abandoned the natural function of the woman and burned in their desire toward one another, men with men committing indecent acts and receiving in their own persons the due penalty of their error.
And you keep going. This all ties into what he's saying in 28 too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's almost the whole chapter refers to what I'm talking about. There's a lot of judgments
but in the beginning of the chapter, it says he's going to hold them accountable. God told us up front. Before I go into all this, don't get it twisted. They are still personally responsible for their actions.
Right.
I'm telling you, there's biblical. There's
But this
biblical
whole
scholars
narrative
that I
here is
love.
about sin and consequences of that sin.
There's just a few biblical scholars that I love. There's one that I can bring up off the top of my head, which is Chuck Missler, who it took him years to realize it's speaking about a group of people, not just
But
a
it's
person.
still not a free
It's
pass, though.
It's not a free pass. No, I agree with you.
Okay.
But who here is without sin?
Okay, so we just tell everybody else there's. So we just pick out. So there's 6 people here. Let's pick out one person's sin. Say that's okay. God made you do it, or that's okay. We're not going to offend you by it. But the rest of all you other 5 guys, y'all need to straighten up.
Right, and the difference is you ask us which one of us is without sin, but none of us is asking anyone else on the panel to affirm our sin or celebrate our sin or accept our sin.
Or
when we're in error, we confront each other sometimes publicly.
Read that chapter. I'm not saying to proclaim your sin by any means. Clearly, it's not a good thing. I'm just saying that there's some judgments that God makes according to my interpretation of Scripture that could be applied to groups of people, not just a singular individual.
But it says in the beginning, He will judge them individually.
Respectful.
But it says in the beginning when you read, He will judge them individually. It's not a big swath of get out of jail.
In addition to, as collectively, I agree with you. I think that there's definitely individual judgments, but also we should understand that there's a bigger spiritual warfare possibly going on. This is just hypothetical, and I don't think I'm the only one that has this interpretation of Scripture.
Well, I think that's what happens to a lot of sins. I'm saying it's not just homosexuality. There's a lot of things that fall into the category of God giving the nation over to something at this time of period, this period of time, or that period of time, or this part of the country, that part of the country, or this region of the country is big into this, so this is the result. The other part of the country is big into this other thing, and the other thing is the result. I don't think it's exclusive. This is one example Paul is using, but he's not saying this is the only time that happens or the only sin.
False. I disagree with you. He refers to more than just this issue. He's referring to people being taught, just treating their parents poorly. He's referring to divorce. He's referring to a great many other things than just the issue that we're talking about, all of which is sinful, all of which is a judgment upon a culture.
Okay.
By my interpretation.
This one gets special treatment, though.
There's no special.
Why does this one get special treatment?
There's no special treatment. We should still treat it as sin, but have compassion.
We have to have compassion on everyone. So I worked at a halfway house. Guys got out of prison for murdering people and doing drugs, and I think I had to be compassionate to all of them, not just the one that happened to like dudes. I had to be compassionate towards all of them. They didn't get you're a special class of sinner that gets more compassion than other sinners.
Can I steel man what P-Town's saying? Because I think we're arguing over nothing here. I think what he's saying is that we're seeing this sin. Yes, we're seeing this sin so much more because God has given our society as a whole over to this particular type of sin. And so thus, more people are engaging in this sin. They're still responsible. They'll still be punished for it.
But he's saying they get more compassion than the other person that sins. Pretty much.
No, I'm just
saying.
So
why is the onus on me? Why is the onus on me to ignore it when it absolutely repulses me?
You can do whatever you want about it. My point, I don't know his point on that, is if your goal is to convert that person to a Christian and to make them see the love of Christ, then being aggressive and being purposely offensive will not do it.
Well, I agree with that. But I think he's saying there's a special category here that we have to treat differently than all other sins and all other sinners. And we have to be kids glove with this one. We instead of just being compassionate to everybody or not being overtly aggressive to everybody and everybody's sin, there's a special class of sinner we're dealing with because God made them that way.
What I'm confused about is how in the world does compassion translate to affirmation?
I don't think it does.
Exactly. That's my whole point. I can be compassionate to these people without affirming the madness. I can just tell them I don't agree.
Without being a jerk, right? You can
absolutely
without being unnecessarily rude or mean.
And I feel like typically I do that.
I agree.
I think so too. I just think when you can think it's a mental illness and you can even be correct about. You can even be correct. I'm not sure. I don't know the answers. I don't know.
It's interesting you bring that up because I did want to correct what I said. I stated that I believed homosexuality was a mental illness, and I did a lot of reflecting on that, and I think what is more proper and appropriate is that homosexuality more often than not leads to mental illness.
And I'm saying that gender, I'm not saying homosexuality is mental illness, I'm saying gender dysphoria is a mental illness. But I worked with mentally ill people 8 hours a day for 3 years, and I had to be compassionate towards all of them, no matter which variant of mental illness they had. I had to be compassionate towards all of them. And the guy that thought he was Jesus didn't get any more compassion than the guy that thought was Albert Einstein. Just like both of them had this thing going on.
You talk to him in a different way. To reach that guy, to get to him on a fundamental personal level, you probably didn't tease him or make fun of him or ridicule him.
Right. And I'm saying we should do it to anybody. There's not this special class. I'm saying, no, it's all variants, and we just need to treat everyone with compassion while at the same time not accommodating psychosis. And the transgender movement, but there's all same sex is different from transgender. I think there's a distinction there. And I'm talking about transgenderism or gender dysphoria.
That's what I'm trying to say from the beginning, guys, is I told them exactly what I told you, and they were okay with it. I said, I'm sorry, it's a sin. But I believe it's a judgment upon a culture, not an individual. And I'm not going to judge because I'm a Christian, and we're all sinners. And there was no objections. It was fine.
No,
it was great. Am I wrong?
God told you.
Am I wrong?
My problem with that is that it's encouraging believers to soften God's judgment. We're trying to say God doesn't know what he's doing, so we need to soften his blow, right? We need to play Moses and stand between God and people. Jesus has it figured out. And when you put people outside of community, especially a believer, when you put a believer outside of a believing community, you feel so much shame, you want to turn away from that sin so you can be accepted back in the community. Brian and I have seen this especially in the Hebrew circles. Am I wrong, Brian?
No, it's very lonely to be in the Torah movement, and then if you get excluded from it, it's even more lonely. And that's what they did to put people outside the camp. Way back then, you would die if you're an Israelite, and Delvis, you're going to die, or become a bandit. Or in the New Testament period, like it's a very lonely place to be, and it generally does make people examine what they're doing. But it wasn't just this particular sin. Like if someone was, abusive to their spouse, or doing a whole list of things, it was greedy. Someone's swindling people, like you're a con man, you're out here creflo dollaring people. They put you out of the community, so you couldn't do that to people. So it wasn't just the sexual stuff. There was a lot of financial things. Gossip was something they put people outside the community for. Lying all the time, false accusations against people. They put you out of the community. So it wasn't just sexual. It was a whole list of things, but it does make you reflect upon what you're doing, and is it worth it to continue it?
Do you want to be outcast from community?
I guess, but you would. Robert,
help me out, Gracie, because they're not even following what I'm saying. It sounds.
Yeah, I'm trying to bring it to something different. This is the problem that I have with something Robert's guy said. Maybe it'll help out. You made this comparison once before. You compared thievery to transgenderism, where one
it's very comparable. They're both sin.
One of them is a moral sin, and one of them is a societal sin. I'm saying they're both sin.
There's no such thing as a moral sin or society sin or a personal sin or community.
Are you talking about a venal sin versus a mortal sin in Catholicism?
I'm just saying
they're all mental sins.
It's all sin, period.
Paul said there's a sin.
It's all mental sin.
There's no level or department of sin. You either sin against a holy God or you don't. It doesn't matter if you're.
Paul said there's mortal sins, and there's sins that lead to death and sins that don't.
Right. So there are clearly sins. But my point is, when you have thieves harm other people. Maybe transgender people harm themselves. And that is the difference. And that is why even people that set aside the Christian worldview for a second, just a worldview of people being compassionate to people, we don't want to be stolen from. So that leads us to not want to steal from other people, generally.
So in a hyper-independent society, though, in a hyper-independent society...
But societies like that don't survive because they just don't get selected to survive.
Well, America is a highly independent society. It's fallen apart because of the dyadic society and the communal society and the role society. Everyone has to do their role, and the community will not survive. So everything affects everyone else's survival. And sometimes something's a sin against God more than man, because if it's more in the image of God, or God gave the marriage between a man and a woman to be a picture of the Christ in the church, it's a sin against God. Because it's more in the image of God. And there are things that hurt people more than hurt God. Like thievery hurts people more than hurts God. But some things more the image of God. Or more the image of the whole lesson between a man and a wife, Christ and church, this whole thing.
That's why you don't have advocates for thievery. That's why no one's out there saying, let people be thieves, because unless you're mentally disturbed somehow, you don't want to be stolen from.
Well, kleptomania is a diagnosis, and people try to use it to get out
Yes,
stuff.
but not everyone who steals is
or
kleptomania, right?
Substance abuse disorder. I stole it because I had to get high. Oh, well, that's okay now. We didn't understand. Let's go to rehab instead of prison for stealing stuff all the time. I mean, everything that's wrong in society, people are trying to find a way to accommodate it now.
Well, it's not accommodating. Like if you want to stop thievery and someone has a drug addiction and you could stop the drug addiction, you could stop some of the thievery. It doesn't make them less responsible for the thievery. It's just
that doesn't follow.
What do you mean it doesn't follow? If someone is stealing
that logic does not follow.
Please, okay, let me finish the statement and tell me where my logic falls. Someone is stealing to buy drugs. You take away their need to get drugs. Do they need to continue to steal to buy drugs?
If you assume it's actually to buy drugs, sometimes they just steal. They blame it on a substance abuse disorder, which was recently invented, and then it's okay. Well, it's okay. They're okay because you have a kleptomania or substance abuse disorder. So just you stole something. Don't relabel it to make it better.
They should still be punished for the thievery, but if we can identify what is making them to steal and change that ultimate behavior, then that'll stop future theft.
If that's what's making them do it, instead of them just labeling
your premise is a non sequitur.
Well, and also you're assuming your premise is You're assuming that the right solution is to give them aid in their killing themselves instead of getting them off of that addiction.
That's what I was saying you do.
No, Grayson's saying to get them
off the addiction, right?
Oh, I'm sorry.
You help them not be addicted so they don't have a reason to steal.
But I'm saying, are they really addicted? Are they just stealing stuff and this is their societal label to get out of it?
But all we can do as humans is try to do things that lead to outcomes we want. So if
everything gets relabeled as a get out free card. Society will relabel whatever you want to do. Society will relabel it for you to give you a get out jail free card for it.
I just don't see it as a get out jail free
relabel it and then makes it okay.
It's not okay.
A lock only keeps an honest person out. If a person's going to steal for their addiction, they're going to find another reason to steal when you solve that addiction.
Yeah, okay, the issue is thievery, not addiction. You're going to steal.
So
that's exactly correct. Your whole premise is a non sequitur, dude. If you have a gift and you're able to steal, no, the whole thing's a non sequitur, bro. Like if I have the ability to steal, right, and the bonus is getting high, right? Like it's just like a dog getting fed a biscuit. Okay, the bonus after a while is merely a bonus. The act becomes muscle memory. Like I said, if you have what do you mean? What do you mean? Like if I know how to ride a bike,
so you think these people just want to steal
and you suddenly flatten my tires. No, hold on a second. If I'm riding, hold on a second. If I'm riding a bike, right, and you flatten my tires so that I don't ride the bike anymore, am I going to stop riding the bike, or am I going to fix the tires, or possibly find another bike? I mean, your argument's a non sequitur.
Okay, so yes, without perfect knowledge, I'll agree. So if we take them at their word, that was the start of my thing. So if they are lying and they're stealing because they like it, then you're right. Changing their behavior will do nothing. But if they are telling the truth and they are stealing solely for the drugs, then we have changed the behavior. We have changed the thievery.
That's the problem, because I know people were to drug rehab and I went to a halfway house. People have done it for both, but there are people who they just want to steal stuff and they will blame it on whatever is available.
There's nothing you can do about that.
If they're no longer addiction, they're not in their addiction, they're less likely to do that. But there are a lot of people that will just use whatever is available as a validation to do it so they get less punishment.
Hey,
but it's hard to know why they're doing it, though.
And we're tying this to people who are transgender.
P-Town, I am going to give you. I'm going to give P-Town the platform, but first we had Darkness join us. Darkness, hello.
Hello, Darkness, my old friend.
Plus, I have an announcement to make. I got a new job.
Congratulations.
Just kidding. Just kidding. I do not work at Waffle House, but I like Waffle House. That's why I got the hat. Just kidding.
Dude. I thought you were trying to tell me you wanted to throw down or something.
Are you waffling on the issue, Ryan?
I'm waffling, yes.
All right.
Waffling on the issue.
So
I do have some friends that work at Waffle House, and that's why I bought the hat.
What is that picture? Is that a dog or people? Is that someone's feet?
Darkness, have you joined us before?
What is a dog?
I see a
One of
dog.
ours.
I had a dog on my bed just a little while
Ryan,
ago.
you keep over speaking darkness as soon as he starts. Can you please try not to do that? You've done it 3 times now.
I'm so sorry. I'm about to go anyway.
No, it's okay. Darkness, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's a
one of
bully.
ours.
That's an American.
That is an American bulldog.
So, Darkness, are you a Christian or a non-believer like myself?
Is he on mute?
You guys for a little bit. Town multiple times.
Darkness, you're having mic issues. We don't know what you're saying.
It's only picking up some of what you're saying.
Let me switch to my headset. Can you hear me at all?
Yeah, we hear you now. That might actually be why Ryan kept interrupting you, because you're cutting out.
Yeah, I think he couldn't hear you. I couldn't tell who was talking when. If it was trying to talk
Other headset.
Okay, so go ahead. What's up?
I've lurked for you guys for a little bit. I've talked to P-Town multiple times and a brief every now and then, but
You're
really
cutting
around.
out, Darkness. Sorry, Darkness. We don't know what you're saying.
My headset. I'll be back.
Okay.
So, P-Town, do you know his background? Is he Christian or atheist? Or
I talk to so many people. Most likely he's an atheist, or gosh, if I converted somebody, oh my goodness, I'll do backflips. But
well, there's your calling. We went to evangelism.
So hopefully he's not too rough with me. Like, you made me more of an atheist. That'll make me really sad. But
I just helped
I think that's like you pin on somebody.
I just helped win one of my favorite atheists halfway over. I got him to believe in God, and now I just have to get him to believe that Christ is God, and we're there.
And so where I'm ministering right now is like in this. I apologize for coming in and just crashing the party with extremism, guys. Like, I minister to the people who are so far gone. My goal is that some sort of seed will grow 10, 20 years from now, and maybe it'll be 1 in 1,000. And I think it'll be worth it. Like, I'm just trying to put it in perspective here. When I bring up and I apologize, when I'm trying to express that we should be compassionate to people who are this extreme, it's just not a typical conversation. And I'm sorry if I ruined the room at all. Honestly, I would have loved for Father Charles to rebuke me and have his opinion and help me grow. Like, because I'll be honest with you guys, I want out of it. It's a very thankless job. It's no fun. And I would love for God to send me in a different direction.
Do you think it's a seasonal assignment?
I do. I think it's temporary. Yeah. Gosh, it's the only way I can keep moving.
Well, our conversation started out with callings and help people find their calling. And that's part of it. As part of your coaching is a seasonal assignment. Sometimes if you've done this, most things or other things are going to seem lighter. Like you train too hard. Leave a good coach, they'll train you double hard to face an opponent that's only half as bad as you thought they were. So if you've done this, everything else will seem like lighter work.
I think that God's doing it. I think that my ministry is going to be to Christians one day. I hope so. Mm-hmm. Agnostics, oh my gosh, what a breeze. Mm-hmm. I'm talking people who are just as Scripture says, they are so far turned away, reprobate minds. Their heart is so hardened they won't hear.
Yeah, but P-Town, you made me more of an atheist than I ever was.
Here we go.
I got him.
I called it, didn't I, boys?
So look, you got a job?
Me?
Yes, you. So excuse me, guys. I just want to talk to P-Town for just a second, and then I'd love to address whatever it is you guys are. It's kind of hard to follow because it bounces around so much. But
you guys will get to witness what I do.
No. So look, dude, we've talked on Madsen's channel several times. We've talked on your channel a couple of times. And if you don't remember, it's probably because you were jobless and 5 to 6 beers in when we first started conversating.
I remember you.
You got a job?
I do have a job. Yeah, I just I'm going after larger acquisitions. I typically make about 150,000 a year, and I provide for my family where we have an oceanfront property, all to God's glory. It's a fixer-upper. It's been really stressful. I switched jobs last year for a job that only paid about 90, and I've lost 100 grand in the last year when it comes to the down payment, country club membership, and everything. I only have about 50K left, but luckily I have 300,000 in my retirement. But I don't want to tap into that because that's millions of dollars, and it's been really, really stressful. But I'm right now I'm working straight commission, trying to secure larger acquisitions. So far, I have 2 states that I've secured for a collection company. That's my buddies, and I'm trying to purchase for $2 million.
Hey,
I am
P-Town.
working my butt off.
P-Town.
Yeah.
You forgot to mention, and this was your words, not mine, you have the most attractive wife in the neighborhood.
Glory to God. I go to, and I told you I'm a sinner because I go around and I'm like, how come there's no women as attractive as my,
I meant no disrespect. Those were your words, not my own.
But darkness
not the
wants to
Waffle House
tell
waitress.
so what's your point?
Right, because Jesus gave you a hot wife. I just wanted to say congratulations on the job. I think that's awesome because you were kind of in the dumps for a while there.
I've made zero money.
Happy to hear.
I've made zero money for 6 months. Zero money for 6 months, and I'm really stressed out about it. I did land a couple states, the state of Montana, and I hopefully, God, it's really tough. I'm always I go for gold. I try to trust in God, and that He would just bless me as long as I continue to minister to people like you, Darkness. That's my goal, man. It's not these monetary things.
Darkness.
I just like sunsets, Darkness. I like sunsets, and I bought this piece of crap house. My wife's killing me right now because I'm out here talking to you instead of fixing the broken pipe in the basement. We can't use the sinks.
And eclipses,
Well,
right?
I would like to interject for just a moment. Darkness, I don't know if you're familiar with the channel, but we invite atheists on, and we try to convert you guys. And I'm just curious as to why you're not a believer yet.
Oh God, why would I be?
I mean, why wouldn't you be?
Right, because there's no good reason to be.
You don't see
Or you
any
said it's
benefit?
intellectually or emotionally or socially or historically?
There's no good reason to be.
Darkness, there is a good reason to be, and I'm always overcoming science objections. I do stupid things like talk about the solar eclipse to point out that you have a different approach to here.
Obviously, you have no recollection of our interactions whatsoever. If you did, we wouldn't be talking about any of that. We wouldn't have been any of that. So, and that's fine. Let
me close with my point.
I'm not very memorable to speak of, but my point being is we've had interactions before, and if you remembered them, all of that doesn't. I mean, so anyway. To the rest of
Darkness.
I remember. So let me get to the point.
I'd like to ask him a question though. Yeah. I would like to know, Darkness, your single biggest objection to there being a God.
It sounds kind of an odd question because I don't have an objection to there being a God.
Well, you have to have an objection if you don't believe so. Passionately.
When you say, do I have an objection towards that, it makes you sound like, would I dislike it if there was a God, right? It's not an objection. I just don't have any good reason to believe there is a God.
So you have an evidence that there is no God?
No, that's not really the way that works, right? So I don't see any good reason to believe there is one. So when you say, hey, there's this God, I don't.
Yeah, Ryan, you out?
In just a minute, but I just wanted to say, Darkness, in order for there to not be a God, then that means things have to be able to create themselves. That means nothing is able to create everything.
That gets into like your own credulity, right? Like, and if you don't believe that something can come from nothing, I don't think something can come from nothing. It seems like you think God made something from nothing, which is reasonable, sure. I mean, if there is a God, but that doesn't do anything for me, right? And nor do I think that's a good reason to believe there's a God, because you got a lot of work to do to get from where it all started to God, right? Like, so that just doesn't do anything.
I
for me.
disagree.
Brothers-
I think
brothers,
even if you believe in evolution, you have to have a God as a starter.
No, you don't.
I mean,
You
brothers,
absolutely do.
Let me.
Things-
He came on because I'm here.
Yeah.
Let me have a shot at him. Okay,
Okay,
because
let me
this
say
is why we're so
this.
hard to have a second chance with these guys. Just give me a
I'll
chance.
probably watch this tomorrow, but y'all have a good night and God
Good
bless.
night,
I'm going to head out.
Bye, Ryan.
And we'll see y'all tomorrow, hopefully. Bye.
Let me give it a shot. Is that okay with you guys?
I'm gonna let Brian moderate this.
Well, so P-Town, obviously you guys have a relationship, and Darkness called the top on to say congratulations on your job, which is awesome, and it's a very kind, encouraging thing to do. And I don't want him to feel like dogpiled because he just jumped on to say hi. But this is a mostly Christian forum. This is an interview show. Me and Steven do, Proverbs Guy, where we interview people doing good things in the world, like fighting sex trafficking and stuff like that. We're going to get 2 trafficking survivors on the night, and they both had to cancel, so other people jumped on to discuss our callings, and it turned into something else. But as far as the question, what I understand you saying, Darkness, is, and I've kind of been there myself, if there is a God, I need to see some evidence. I need him to make himself apparent. I need him to be real for me. I don't want to believe just because someone told me to.
I'm sorry, Mr. Dream Guy. I didn't say anything of the sort. I'm
trying to understand you.
I simply said there's no good reason to believe in God, and for you to say, "Oh, well, you're saying something different," then I don't know how I can make myself any more clear that I don't see any good reason to believe in God or
that's what
God.
I'm trying to clarify with you. Is that you don't want to believe in something just because someone told you to. You would need to see some evidence. You don't see it. You would need something to be apparent to you, not just all of us telling you there is.
Well, I'd need a good reason to believe in God, right? Like, I mean, do you think a good reason for anything is somebody telling you that there's something? I mean,
you have to know it for yourself. You can't be talked into it. You have to know it for yourself. He has to show you. Other people.
I would imagine it's because you've had an experience is why you believe, right? I mean, probably all of you guys have had an experience of what really like concretes your belief. It's not because of some evidence.
I had a doozy of an experience.
It's not because you were raised in the church, which I would imagine that all of you were raised in some sort of like Christian family.
Well, you got Dream Guy way off.
Darkness.
Yeah, you got Dream Guy way off. He's got a story with Hell's Angels and everything else.
So Dream Guy, it wasn't an experience.
Was the logic came first? Logic came first. Like, well, my mom was a church person. I was like, okay, whatever. That's what y'all do. My dad was a drug dealer, and my mom died at 14, so I was kind of on my own for years. I was like, God, do you exist? If you exist, do you care? But like, just observation. Look at a stop sign. Like, no one can tell me that stop sign accidentally made itself. This is just totally 1,000% completely illogical. So there is something there that is intelligent that made all this. It started with that, and over time it dwindled down to like, okay, this is Yahweh of the Hebrews, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But yeah, it was a lot of logic. Some experiences later, like in the past 10 years, and I'm 42, but most of it was just there's something there. It's totally logical to think there isn't. So it's more my case. I can't speak for everyone else, but I was just trying to understand where you're coming from, because I totally agree. I don't believe in anything because a bunch of people told me to or pressure me into it. Or this is just the most important question in the universe cannot be decided by, well, my friends think so. You need to personally know in your mind and your heart for yourself, not because other people told you to believe it. Other people can ask questions, show you evidence, ask you why you think this or that, logically reason it out with you. But no one's going to convince you of God. That's something you can convince someone of. God works in the heart, or the logic of it becomes apparent. Like in Romans, it says the creation testifies. Like logically, it's just illogical to not believe him to me. So, but it's not something we can convince you of. We can answer questions or share things, but we can't convince you of it.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. It's not something you guys can convince me of, obviously.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. You can't be convinced by other people. It's not going to talk you into it.
Someone has to tap me in on this.
Go ahead, PT. Sorry, PT. Sorry.
All right, Darkness.
I don't want to hear about that stupid fucking moon and sun bullshit.
I'm not going to give you a logical argument.
Please don't. Please don't cuss, man. Much love.
Are you talking to me? I don't cuss.
Yeah, darkness.
Oh, okay.
P-Town
Okay.
only curses when he's like 6 beers into it, and then it's raging.
I don't cuss at 6 beers either. But
Well,
you know I'm not a perfect person, right? None of us are. But this is what my wife told me once. She says, P-Town, I know that you want answers. I know you want logic. I know you want reason. But I don't think I can give you all that. And she's told me honestly, this was in a letter before we started officially dating. It took a year for her to date me. She said, actually, I think that if you could do that, if you could logic your way to God, I think you'd be missing out. And this letter changed me because I didn't think about that. Maybe God made it this way for you, darkness. Like you haven't had an experience yet. You haven't encountered God. You haven't gotten to feel that you are made in God's image, that
or
you're a son of
maybe I'm
God.
just a
You haven't experienced it yet.
maybe I'm a pot that's made to be broken. Maybe I'm the one he hated in the womb. Whatever you want to say, right? Like it
I'm not
doesn't
talking
matter.
about the moon. I'm talking about something that is not.
I didn't say the
It's something
moon. I
else.
said maybe I'm the one he hated in the womb, right?
Oh,
I mean,
hated in the womb.
right. There are those of us, depending on how you read the book, and when I read the book, it's very clear that there's an elect and a non-elect, and I would not be elect, therefore I've not had the revelation.
Completely false.
That's way
No,
down the road, though.
you're gonna.
I
It's
believe
right down
that
the
for
road.
years.
You're
I
gonna
believe
have
that
an
for years.
encounter. You're gonna because God wants everyone to be saved. You're going to, and every
The book, obviously not. Come on, obviously not. The book is very clear that he doesn't want everyone to be saved. Otherwise, there wouldn't be as many Calvinists out there as there are, right? Like, I mean,
He's about Calvinism and the book
listen
of
to what
Romans. And I believe
Jesus
that for
says. Who
years.
cares about Calvinism? Listen to what
P-Town,
Jesus
I'm
says.
gonna let Brian
P-Town,
interject for a moment.
Hold on 1 second. P-Town, you have to realize that when we read the book, we all read it differently. We all perceive it differently. When I read the book, I perceive it exactly like all of my Calvinist friends, right? When we went to church, we went to a non-denominational Calvinist church, right? Like, that made sense to me because when I read the book, that makes sense. That's it. That doesn't have anything to do with me being a believer or me not believing or any of that, right? But the matter of fact is when I read the book, I perceive it the same way. And maybe Proverbs guy or Dream guy or Gospel Gladiator, they probably all perceive it differently than you do or I do or whatever. But there's no sense in arguing about it because the book's very clear, at least in my view. And
Are you talking about Jacob and Esau, darkness? Like
No,
God
I'm
loved
just talking
Jacob
about
before he was born.
Calvinism.
That's exactly
I'm
what he's
talking
talking
about
Jacob
about.
and Esau
Dream
comes
guy.
from that.
Oh, in the womb,
Calvin
yeah.
got that from Jacob and Esau, where Esau was hated before he was born.
Right, or
like he was born screwed, basically. And I believe that for years about myself. I was just born screwed. Yeah.
But the pot to be broken. There's also like we speak in parables to turn those away. There's just specific things that when I read the book, I align with when you get a bunch of Calvinists around the table. I say, yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly how I interpret the book. I think it's all myth and made up by man, but I believe the book's very clear about certain things, right? So to say like, oh, well, it's going to happen for you later, or God wants all those to be saved. Well, I don't get that from the book. It's very clear that when I read the book, maybe I'm just not an elect.
Well, that's the very much the Calvinist viewpoint of before you're born, you're Jacob or Esau. He has chosen Jacob to show grace because Jacob was messed up, and God chose to show him grace anyway. Esau still became the founder of 7 countries, though. Esau still had the founder of 7 nations. He wasn't a terrible, abject life. He was mournful because he gave up the birthright, but he still had 7 nations that came from him. But that's strict Calvinism, and that is from Romans and that Jacob Esau story. And I believe that way for 20 plus years, that I was Esau. And this is just life's going to suck because I'm Esau, and that's how it is. But if you read the parables of Jesus, all this, there are the people that are Esau, like actually Esau, the only thing they care about is what they can get. Those people don't have these conversations, and those people don't reach out, and those people don't converse with Christians and evangelists because you have a seed of something in you that wants to reach out, as opposed to a lot of people that just completely don't care.
Yeah,
They wouldn't be in this chat room.
Well, look, Dream Guy. Just that when you say seed of something that wants to reach out, it's almost like you're saying, right? Like, just because I reach out, that should like be some sort of, that should point towards there being some sort of truth, right? Which I don't believe at all, right? Like, the fact that I find this stuff interesting, the fact that I like theology, the fact that I like myth, the fact that I like any numerous things that bring me back to these type of discussions don't point towards any type of truth or any type of
that's awfully convenient.
Well, I'm saying if you
I would say
clarify.
Proverbs guy, it's convenient that it would point to something, right? Like, oh, hey man, you're here, so that obviously points to there's something out there that's like steering the boat, right? When I don't think so, but I live in a community with every neighbor, you know, most of
let me clarify.
The Earth is 10,000 years old. How about that? So that's maybe
Dream Guy, go ahead.
Let me clarify maybe that, you know, outside the conversation, God exists or not, but if you look at, if we're talking about the book, and we're talking about this Jacob, it was considered complete fiction, right? If we consider it complete fiction, and we look at the character Jacob and Esau, and you're trying to determine which one you would be in this fictional book, which character you would match with. If we look at the characteristics of Esau didn't care about anything spiritual. That was what made him Esau. You can say God made him that way, or God knew he'd be that way, but Esau just didn't care about anything spiritual. And Jacob did. And that was really a separation of Jacob and Esau. Esau only cared about the carnal, physical, material, impulsive, you know, the id and Sigmund Freudian theology. But Jacob functioned more of a super ego. Jacob had these more spiritual pursuits. So if you had to insert yourself as a character in this book you believe is fictional and be a Jacob or an Esau, you would actually be more Jacob, because Jacob had these same kind of things on his mind, these same thoughts, as opposed to Esau, who was more animalistic and just primal and just didn't care, didn't think about this stuff.
Dream Guy,
that's what I'm saying.
Do you think there are human beings out there that God hates?
God hates the sinner, and God hates people in a sense that the people that hate everything spiritual, hate God, hate the spiritual realm, hate the other people. There's different levels of sin or evil or
so
wickedness.
Dream Guy, I don't mean to cut you off, but it's not what I meant, or it was a bad question to ask, because do you think? I
think it's a very small minority. That's what I'm saying. It's a very small minority
out there that will never come to Christ.
There are people that never will. There are definitely people that never will.
Do you believe that God plays a part in that?
I think sometimes God chooses.
Written in the book or predestined people never to come to Him.
Absolutely not.
That's see, I used to be very Calvinistic in a lot of ways, but I'm not so much anymore. I think people that have set their heart to do a certain thing, and God doesn't get in their way.
So what makes
they're set against it? They're set against it. They've set themselves against it. Like with Pharaoh decided he's not going to surrender, and God's like, okay, that's what you want to do. Sometimes He will make more effort to override more effort with someone, like the Apostle Paul, specific purpose, knock him off the donkey. But that's not everybody. Most time this is what they want to do. God doesn't make them want that. That's just what they want. And
you said that's not everybody, but there are some people out there like that, right? That God will never come to Christ because God's predestined them to never come to Christ.
I don't think it's God predestining them. I think God's honoring their free will.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that's where we would just disagree on like a theological thing, because I lean more, when I read the book, I lean more Calvinist than I do. I'm not liberal about when I read the book. I'm not liberal minded in that sense of God is love and Jesus loves everybody and allow everybody.
Oh, absolutely. It's a very American gospel going around right now. But I'm saying, no, God does hate certain people. And it's in Scripture that, God is, if you actually read Genesis to Revelation, God is not Mr. Rogers like we have made him in America. I've been telling people that for years.
Do you believe faith?
And also the past,
how about that?
1 second, for the past 20 years, 30 years, I was very much Calvinistic. Your exact line of thought you're describing, that was me for the most of my life until very recently. That was like 30 plus years, my 42 years.
Do you still believe that faith is a gift?
No, there's measures of faith. There's measures. Some people have more faith than others, but everyone has the capacity for faith because it takes a lot of faith to be an atheist.
Hey,
It's how you
folks,
use faith. Good.
I hate to interrupt, but we've been going for over 2 hours, and it is 11 p.m., and I have to farm in the morning. So I will have to apologize, but I am going to have to shut this down. Darkness, I don't know if you're familiar with the channel or not, but come back.
I liked and subscribed. I'll be back. One last thing before I go. I didn't mean faith in the gift in the sense of that. I mean that there is something that God has to do. When I read the book, it's very clear that there's something God has to do inside of me before I can believe. Before I can ever come to Christ, God has to do something.
God has to initiate it to override your human nature.
That's correct.
Sin nature. Yeah. But when you look at Romans also, it says creation testifies. So every human being is on this planet, and every human being can see nature and deduce that there's got to be something up there. So I think God initiated it through everybody through the creation. But I've got a website, Shalom to Your Heart. It's this giant, Shalom like peace, like shalomtoyourheart.com. Giant resource library. It took me 3 years to build. But I say if you look at apologetics, there's a lot I put on there.
I don't mean to be rude, but yeah, I'm not going to look at that. But I would like to come back on at some time and we could continue the conversation.
Steven's the moderator.
Hey, Darkness.
Let's discuss.
Yes, sir.
Darkness, one day you and I are going to have to square up.
Well, what about Thursday night at Stump Show?
There's no squaring
we can do
up.
that.
Darkness, why don't you come back Thursday night when Stump has his show? That'll be a fun night.
Proverbs, I'll see if I can't make that. But to you, Gladiator, I'm not looking for a fight. Squaring up.
Well, I'm being funny. I'm being funny.
I do want to warn you, though, Darkness. We will convert you.
I do enjoy the conversation. And honestly, Proverbs guy, that would have happened long ago if it were going to happen. Trust me.
Brother, you just haven't encountered us yet.
No,
we got you.
It's God to get the glory for that, not the humans. So
right.
I'll give you a very brief. The short of it is, I've run with more pastors than I can tell you. We run.
That's your problem.
No, most of our friends, like I would say, 90% of our friends are Christian, family's Christian. If it were going to happen, it's not going to be because of, like P-Town would like to think, right? But anyway, maybe
I will challenge you, sir. I will challenge you, sir, to come back Thursday evening.
How about this? I'll definitely try my best to come back Thursday. I don't know what life's going to look like in the next couple of days.
I'll take it.
But Proverbs, I will say this. From everything I've watched of your channel and you guys, there's nothing that's piqued my interest as far as conversion. But I do like the conversation that Dream Guy and I had because I like theology.
Well, so it's going to be between you and God. If something major like that changes, that's between you and Him.
That's what I think.
And humans can't take the glory for it. Is the thing. We might be used to say something or share something, but at the end of the day, that's between you and God. And He's going to do it in a way that only He gets the glory at the end of it.
Hey, I'm gonna go. Otherwise, I'll go. I'll talk all night. Grayson, I would like to talk to you a little bit at some point because what piqued my interest, honestly, to come on tonight was the addiction. Because you all have any of you ever had any personal experience with addiction?
Yes.
Okay. Then
which kind of addiction?
Any kind of addiction.
Pornography addiction, food addiction, codependency, and I've also worked
any kind of addiction.
Yeah. I've listed my three. And I've also worked at a drug rehab. So.
Oops.
No.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is that me or you?
No, I was saying no. I haven't. No, addiction's not something that. Nope. It's not part of my. I don't think I'm able to be addicted to things. But
he's not asking about current addictions. He's talking about past addictions.
Nothing ever.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Congratulations.
It's rare.
Yeah.
Well, it's just part of my personality. It's like emotions play a lot of here in human addiction. But
so you don't get the dopamine hit like other would.
I mean, I assume that's why. I could just quit anyway.
Yeah, you're not controlled by the dopamine.
Gotcha. Not at all. Yep. So let me throw something out before you leave, Proverbs guy. So I got to go in tomorrow for did some surgery on my wrist for tinnitus.
Oh, wow.
But if I went there tomorrow and my tinnitus was healed, that'd be a miracle. Get on it.
Good chance of it.
That'd be testing God, though, wouldn't it? So if I said, because that could sway me towards belief, but then is it testing God to ask you for my wrist to be healed?
You know what we could do is I could pray for you tonight and ask God to keep you safe through the surgery and to let it go good and to let you get healing from it and for everything to be corrected from here on out.
It's just a shot tomorrow. Hopefully I don't actually get the surgery. But I do. But like I said, they do an x-ray before they give me the shot to make sure it's still inflamed. But
my ex-wife got miraculously healed with torn meniscus by the top orthopedic surgeon in the Southeast, was her boss's boss. She had the x-rays. She had surgery scheduled for 2 weeks. With the Pentecost, they got prayed over by a 20-year-old deacon and then went back. The x-rays totally fine, canceled the surgery, knee didn't pop or anything. The whole time I was married to her. I feel like it's like, I think in one instance she messed it up again doing something else. But yeah, it was totally miraculously healed, medically confirmed. So it happens, but it's not every time though. But if our conversion is dependent on one miracle, then we need another miracle to keep it. So, but we pray God heals you and you get whatever you need to have the understanding you want you to have.
Yeah.
But I hope it comes out well for you, because it's really hard to have tonight and do anything.
Folks, I love you all. I'm so sorry. I have to go.
May your corn grow.